Hey, everybody, real quick, if you need a recap of the morning show, season 1 through 3, I've got you covered. Just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. It'll take you right to it. Now, season 4 picks up 2 years after the merger of UBA, which is now UBN. There have been some cuts, as you can imagine. There's also been some acquisitions. Like, they now have this ultra-edgy sports guy that everybody seems to hate. He goes by the Bro. The guy's a douche. Speaking of sports, Chris didn't end up going to ESPN. We're not sure what happened, but she stayed. And maybe it has something to do with UBN acquiring the Paris Olympic Games, which is going to be their coup de grace. That's going to be the thing that gets them back on top, because up until this point, the merger hasn't quite worked out the way that they thought it would. UBN had a lot of positivity regarding their new way of doing things. The figureheads now running things are Alex Levy, a woman named Celine, and Stella, who took over Corey's old job. She's running things. They put a lot of money into acquiring the Paris Games, and they're pulling a full-on blitz. One of the things they're doing is they have a new AI technique that's going to allow Alex Levy to speak in multiple languages all around the world. Instead of people watching the Olympic Games from another channel, they're all going to be locked into UBN. They have a new tech guy explain this to the crew, and the crew isn't excited about it. They're actually worried that AI is now going to take their jobs. And one of the reasons why is because the shows have been decimated by these cuts. But Alex and Stella both say, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to get back on top with this new deal. A lot of them, though, are skeptical, as you can imagine. With Alex now taking a more executive approach, she's stretched pretty thin, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have time to catch up on the industry buzz. And one of the things going on is that Chip has a documentary streaming at Cannes. Alex's new assistant, Remy, has actually seen it, which Alex seems to be a little annoyed by because she would have liked to take a look at it, but she also realizes she doesn't have time. She has to get ready for an interview with an Iranian fencer who's getting ready for the Olympic Games. And this is one of the things that UBN is doing. They're doing these interviews with some of the athletes so that you can get to know them and hopefully watch the product. Because this is such a big interview, a lot of the bigwigs are there. Like, Ben is there to introduce Alex to Roya and her father, Asharam. Asharam is going to be interpreting any of the questions that Roya doesn't understand. Alex does some pleasantries with Roya and her father, but her father goes to shake Alex's hand and holds it a little too long. And that's because he's passing a note to Alex that once she opens her palm up, it reads, "We want to defect." And Alex goes right into humanitarian mode. Throughout the interview, she's trying to figure out a way to do this. She's asking the prearranged questions about sports and whatnot, and Roya and her father are going through the motions answering them. But then Alex figures out a way to get alone with Roya. She asks a political question, which gets the Iranian guard pissed off and shuts the interview down right away. Ben jumps in to try to smooth things over, as is a bunch of people. There's a commotion going on, and it allows Alex to pull Roya aside in a separate room and ask her, "Do you want to defect? Are you sure?" And Roya is adamant, "Yeah, I do." So Alex is going to help her. She says, "Take the freight elevator over there, downstairs. My car is waiting. They'll take you somewhere. Go now." And then Alex pulls the fire alarm. When the fire alarm gets pulled with all the commotion, everybody's kind of scrambling for an exit, and Alex tells her father, Asharam, the same thing she told Roya. Go to the fire escape, leave. When everybody exits the building, they see Asharam and his daughter in Alex's car take off, but not before the Iranian guard tried to stop them. I mean, they literally chased after them. And while what Alex did is noble, it's going to come with a lot of backlash. Because a couple of weeks before the games, she just helped an Iranian girl defect. That's going to be a big thing with the Justice Department, not just for UBN. So they had to have an emergency meeting that night with all of them. Alex, Stella, Celine, Mia, and Ben. And while they understand why Alex did what she did, they are very, very concerned. One thing Alex didn't realize was that Asharam works for the Iranian nuclear department. That's really who they want. They don't really care about Roya. They want her father. Immediately, that changes Alex's entire mood. She didn't know this. And Stella informs her the only interviews you need to worry about are with the FBI next week. Now, UBN is in complete damage control. They need to tell the Olympic Committee, which then they suddenly realize, wait, can the Olympic Committee revoke our contract? And that would be massive. Celine reminds them that they moved heaven and earth to get the Olympics. They spent a lot of money to get the Olympics. They're banking on the Olympics. They better not lose the Olympics, not for this humanitarian effort. as noble as it is. Oh, and they might have started World War III because, Iran could get pretty pissed off that America just helped this nuclear scientist defect. Then there's the matter of what to do about the pre-interviews. Alex was supposed to do all of them, and Stella says, no, you're not doing any of them now. We need to soft launch you basically at Paris. We'll put Chris on them. And Mia steps in and goes, I think Chris is stretched really thin. And Stella's answer to that is then take her off of the morning show. But that's going to leave a hole in the morning show. Mia still thinks this is a really bad idea. So after this meeting the next morning, she goes and she talks to Chris about it, trying to feel Chris's mood on the whole situation. And to her surprise, Chris is all about it. She wants a bigger role. She wants to do these interviews. She feels like she's earned the right to do these interviews, and she feels like she's not stretched too thin. While Mia's going to respect her wishes, she does need to run into somebody, and that someone's going to be Stella. And then you find out the real reason why Mia was so against taking Chris off of TMS. As she tells Stella, Chris drives TMS's ratings. So when the ratings go down, it's going to reflect badly on Mia, even though Mia was promised a promotion 2 years ago that she hasn't gotten, and that kind of justifies not giving it to her in the future. Stella understands. The two start brainstorming on what they're going to do, how they're going to fill Chris's role, and then they realize the last time that the ratings were as high as they've ever been was when Bradley was co-hosting with Alex. And Bradley, no one knows what she's really up to. It's been 2 years. Maybe, just maybe, Mia can get her back. So what has Bradley been up to? Well, she did make a deal with the feds that she did no jail time because she gave them so much information on Paul Marks, but it's not like she's free to do really whatever she wants. She does have to tell them if she's going to leave the state of West Virginia. That's where she's been located. She's been teaching a journalism class at a local community college, and she's been fine. And one day, after a very unexciting class, she heads home, and she's shocked because there's her former producer, Mia Jordan, in her driveway. At first, she thinks, well, Mia's just coming to check in and see how I'm doing. It's been a little bit. But then Mia gets to the point about Bradley coming back to TMS. And as Mia is pitching Bradley, Stella is going in to put some feelers to Alex about Bradley returning. And to Stella's surprise, Alex is completely against the idea. It's not like she doesn't like Bradley. She just doesn't like the idea of Bradley coming back to TMS. Plus, she had other names that she was considering, but it's too late. Mia's already in West Virginia, already making the pitch. Doesn't seem to matter anyway. Bradley feels the same way as Alex. That, yeah, it's just not right. I'm not going back. Thanks for the offer, but no. And Mia's left to text Stella that night, yeah, it's not looking good for Bradley coming back. Something changes, though, that night. As Bradley is grading some papers, she gets a weird text from a sort of communication service like a Telegram or a WhatsApp. And she doesn't know who this person is, but the person says, oh, so you told Mia no. Right away, Bradley says, who is this? But the person doesn't answer. The person answers a few hours later and just says, there's something at your old work that's being covered up and you need to look into it. And then they send Bradley a video of a bunch of birds, I'm talking probably 1,000, falling from the sky dead. And then they send Bradley more stories about connections of chemical companies in the water, poisoning people, people dying, and all of it being covered up. And whoever this mystery person is tells Bradley, somebody at your old work killed the story. Find out who it is. You're the journalist. And because Bradley does still view herself as a journalist, curiosity is going to get the best of her. She's going to go back to the morning show. She lets Mia know the next day, all right, I'm in. Shortly after getting the information, Mia goes to talk to Alex, but Alex's mind is only on Roya. She had to go talk to the FBI that day about what happened, but she's more concerned with the fact that she hasn't seen Roya, and she knows that the State Department needs to act quickly to get them asylum. She's really, really concerned about this. She even goes so far as to ask Mia, hey, do you have any connections? But Mia tells her, Alex, I think we got to stay out of this one. I think it's just above our pay grade. But Alex isn't willing to do that. No. She got Roya and Asheram into this mess. She's going to try to get them out of it. She knows one person that might be able to help, and it's her father. So after the morning show, she heads to meet with her dad at his university that he's teaching at, and it comes as a surprise. Because, as her dad puts it, we're fighting. Why exactly are you here? And Alex at first tries to do a hypothetical, hey, you helped someone with asylum years ago. Do you still have friends in the State Department? Like, what exactly would happen if somebody was working and they got, they got citizenship? And what's the deal with that process? And her dad lets her know, well, I mean, ideally, they would get a whole new identity. Worst case scenario, though, they would get sent back to their country. And Alex knows that leaves Roya alone in a country that she's not familiar with and she barely speaks the language. Alex can't let that happen. She asks her dad, do you have any connections in the State Department anymore? But the answer is no, and his advice is, Alex, stay out of it. He does ask her a favor, though. He is going to be promoted to the head of his department. And there's a journalism student that wants to do a piece on him, and he wants just Alex Levy to talk nicely about him, which for Alex might be difficult to do because they don't have the best relationship. No word on if Alex is going to do it or not. Back at the office, though, everybody's just excited about Bradley coming back. Celine goes so far as to stop in Estella's office and congratulate her, but Stella corrects Celine and says, no, congratulate Mia. She's the one who did it. And then Celine's husband shows up, a guy named Miles, and Stella says hello to him. But these two, well, they're screwing. Yeah, no, they're having a full-on affair. I mean, the other night when Stella got word that Bradley wasn't in fact coming back, she was at a hotel bar being picked up by Miles, where they went back to her place and they banged each other's brains out. And this has been going on for a while behind Celine's back. You can tell that the way that Miles acts around Celine when Stella's there bothers Stella because she wants that. She wants to be with this guy, but she's still got her guard up. Now, not too far away downtown, Bradley has arrived back in New York City, and the first person she goes to see is her old buddy, Alex. Alex hugs her, they share a glass of wine, and as per usual with these two, initially the conversation is very friendly, very formal. But then it gets contentious. Because when Alex tells Bradley, I really don't think that this is the right spot for you anymore, Bradley gets pissed off. One of the reasons why is because Mia told her, no, Alex wants you back, and now Alex is telling her, I don't want you back. Alex just doesn't think it's the right thing with everything that happened with Hal, and Bradley shoots back that Alex didn't go full bore against everything they had on Paul Marks because it might have reflected poorly on her. She feels like it's a double standard. At the end of it, as usual, these two don't see eye to eye. They get really, really pissy at each other, and they go their separate ways, but Bradley is in fact starting on the morning show the next day. And Alex feels like someone needs to know about that. That person is Corey. Now, where's Corey been? Well, he had a busy day. He's out in L.A. working with a movie studio, and it was a headache. They had a big stunt that day planned, but fires up north have screwed up the sky, and they have to film inside, which pissed off the director, which ended up pissing off the main talent for the movie, and Corey had to go smooth things over. And as he's giving a very impassioned speech to the lead actress on why she needs to come back, he finds out, no, she quit. And now he's in desperation mode. He spends most of the afternoon calling every single agent trying to get an A-list star, and he can't. And there's one person left on his list. And thanks to Kyle, he finds out where that agent's going to be off hours so he can kind of ambush him. And it just so happens to be the same agent that Alex has and Bradley has. So they do have a history, they do have a past, but it's not like this guy wants to see Corey. He knows that there's an end game here. And one of the things that Doug tells Corey is the fact that this does not look good. You had Bradley with the unsafe work environment story, even though he was cleared of all charges of that. But, the public perception might say otherwise. And then you've got this lead actress saying that she was working in an unsafe environment. That's 2 stories in 2 years. Maybe he just needs to lay low. And that sets Corey off. He starts ranting about the fact that he was, in fact, cleared of those, and that Bradley Jackson is forgotten at this point. But that insult seemed personal. And eventually they do get back to the movie. Back to Doug's client, Julia, we figure it might be Julia Roberts, and he tells Corey, look, send me the script over. So Corey feels like he worked out this whole situation that day. He's feeling pretty good when he gets a phone call from Alex, and he's very surprised about this, and he's in a good mood. Until Alex tells him, yeah, I just thought you should know. I don't know if you heard the news, but Bradley Jackson is returning to the morning show. In episode 2, Bradley returns the next day to the morning show, and she's trying to get her bearings together. It's a little nerve-wracking going in there after not being around for 2 years, but everyone's really nice to her. But Mia quickly walks up, she welcomes her back, and she addresses the elephant in the room. Hey, we're going to have to address the Hal situation, because while it's not known that Bradley helped, at first at least, keep Hal's name out of the news, it is known at this point that Bradley's brother was, in fact, an insurrectionist, and they're going to have to address it right out the gate on the morning show, and Bradley says, yeah, I'm good with that, no problem. Yanko then interrupts the conversation because now, with his role being different on the morning show, he wants to discuss how he and Bradley can coexist. Not that they have a bad relationship, they have a good relationship, but as Yanko puts it, you're a reactor and I'm a reactor, we both can't be reactors. And Bradley's surprised about that. She never really looked at herself as a reactor. She always thought her and Alex were both kind of givers and takers. But as Bradley gets ready that day, there's only really one thing on her mind. Who is this person who keeps texting her? Who is this person that wants her to find this mole, this story in the room? And she can't help but look around at the staff and wonder, is it that person? Is it that person? As everybody's just getting ready to do the morning show. Not too long later, though, the cameras roll. It's Bradley, Yanko, and Christine right there on the desk, and they do open it up to the insurrection question, and Bradley flops. She's just kind of all over the place with her answers, and it doesn't seem like she's prepared. But she assures Mia, I'll get ready, don't worry, I'll be fine, it's just nerves. But it's not. It's the fact that this random person is texting her, and she can't focus and get her mind right. One person that was watching Bradley flop on national television was Alex, who obviously was against Bradley coming back in the first place. She gets a text from Corey saying, are you watching this? And Alex says, yeah, I'm going to the office right now to talk to Stella. As she's heading to Stella's office, she runs into that sports guy, the bro, and the bro really wants her to come on his show, but they have this love-hate relationship where he knows that she hates him, and he knows that she can't do anything about his success on the station. So, yeah, it's really copacetic. When Alex, though, gets up to Stella's office, she's surprised because it's not just Stella. It's Stella, it's Celine, and then there's a guy named John from Legal. They want to talk to her about the whole Iranian situation again. They get right to the point and they ask her, did you collude with that family to defect? Alex feels completely bamboozled by this, and then John shows her the reason why they have to ask that question. Because when they pulled the CCTV footage of the room that Alex took that fencer to talk about whether or not she wanted to actually defect, he plays the video, but the video isn't at all of what happened. The video that they play has Alex actually colluding with the girl, saying, this is what we planned for, this is going to work. This is what we talked about, making it seem like Alex had, in fact, colluded with the family to get asylum. But Alex right away says, that's not me. I mean, that's not what happened at all. That's not what I said. And of course, the video evidence is pretty damning, but Alex is adamant, no, that's not me. I'm telling you. Look, you've got me talking 50 different languages. You've got AI. Somebody could have done this. I don't know who, but somebody could have done it. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But what is out of the realm of possibility is the fact that I colluded with a family that I had never met before that day. They then bring up more evidence, the fact that her father has a history involved in this sort of thing, shaping the political climate. But she says, guys, that was 30 years ago. Only John and the representatives from UBN, they know that Alex visited her father the other day. After all, she's a notable figure, and she did come into a classroom with a bunch of kids with camera phones. There's also the matter of a meeting that happened between Alex and officials in Tehran when they went over to go close the Olympic deal. Just all of this stuff makes Alex look really bad in this moment. It makes it look like she did, in fact, collude when she didn't. Alex, though, says that she's innocent. They need to look at who had access to that footage, and she's really upset. And Stella says, no, I'll have my guys look into the footage and figure out the whole AI angle. Until then, though, you need to cancel all public appearances. And Alex isn't happy about that. She feels like she's being silenced. They, however, remind her that it's a matter of national security. They tell her, look, we'll figure out what's going on by Friday and we'll move forward with the appropriate action. But Alex knows that they don't believe her. So once the meeting is done, she spends hours going over not only the footage that they presented, but in her mind, what exactly happened, what exactly she said in that moment. It starts blending together. She can't exactly remember what she said, but she knows that she didn't say what's on the tape. When Alex gets back to her apartment that night, her mood hasn't changed. She's still freaking out. But then she gets a guest, and it's Corey, because he's in town. This isn't the best time for Corey to stop by, but they already agreed that they were going to meet up. And it's not like Corey's doing great. As he tells Alex, I'm about to get out of producer jail and go to real jail for obstructing a federal investigation. So, yeah, I'm sure my financiers for this movie, they're going to love that. But he can tell that she's distracted, and she says, yeah, I wish Bradley was my only problem right now. And that's when she reveals that she was deep-faked. She's not sure how exactly she's going to prove that she didn't say it, and she knows that nobody believes her. And if this audio gets out, it's going to look really, really bad for her. That's when Corey says, you're being gaslit. And Alex excitedly says, yes, that's exactly right. As the two start drinking, they start thinking about who could have possibly done this, and Alex isn't oblivious to the fact that she's made enemies in her career. And Corey asks, well, what does Celine think? And Alex says, she's saying all the right things, but I know she doesn't believe me. And Corey actually knows Celine from back in the day. He tells her she can be tough. I mean, she's really hard-headed. Her family tried to disown her for dating Miles, and she decided to marry him just out of spite. And love, of course, but out of spite. Alex just says, yeah, well, she's not a huge fan of me. She said that they would look into it Friday and then come back and let me know the results. And Corey knows exactly what that means. He's been on that side of the table before, and he tells Alex, girl, they're trying to take it to the board. They hold emergency board meetings on Friday nights before taking a long weekend. She's going to look to get you fired. That was something you can tell Alex was not expecting, and now her anxiety is even worse than it was before. Corey asks her, look, well, how's your relationship with Sybil's daughter? I mean, they still own 20% of the company. And Alex says, yeah, it's not great. And his advice is, it doesn't matter, go kiss the ring. But Alex wasn't the only one to have a meeting that night with a former colleague. Bradley decided to have dinner with Chip. Only Bradley's meeting with Chip had a much more ulterior motive. She wanted Chip's help into finding out who exactly this person is who's texting her. And more importantly, to get to the bottom of the story that the person wants Bradley to get to. But Chip isn't interested. He tells Bradley, look, I finally made my peace with leaving that place. I can't go back. I mean, I feel free in this moment, but sorry. And obviously, Bradley was really hoping that Chip would help, because Bradley's supposed to meet this mysterious person in Central Park the next day. And she wanted Chip to come, but he's adamant, no, I'm not in that kind of game anymore. Only the next day, when Bradley does in fact go to Central Park, she's surprised because Chip does show up. Curiosity got the best of him. And they waited out for this person, but the person never arrives. As for Alex, she headed into the office the next day, and the first person she met with was Mia, who was questioned about exactly what happened between Alex and the Iranian girl. You can sort of tell that Mia is fishy about what happened with Alex, and she tells her, look, I told them what I saw, but I don't exactly know what happened. And Alex explains, I was deep-faked. And then she has an idea. Put me on the morning show to talk about it. I mean, if I'm talking about it, the American public will believe me. They can't let me go. But Mia can't take that risk. She's still trying to get the head of news. It's too risky. They don't want Alex talking at this moment, so unfortunately, she has to shut her down. And Alex really needs a platform at this point. She needs to get public opinion on her side. And there's only one person she can think of that would be able to sway public opinion and allow her to talk freely, and that's the bro. Hat in hand, she goes up to him and she says, I do think that I should probably be on your show at this point. And he's very suspicious. But he does give her a date and time, saying, we'll share the hour. Because the bro has no editorial control. His ratings are just that good. So Alex goes home feeling pretty good. That night, though, Alex's boss, Stella, has a meeting with Corey. Like many of these meetings in this episode, it's not to get caught up. It's somebody having an ulterior motive, and for Corey, it's getting the funding to finish his movie. He starts pitching Stella on it, saying it's going to be an Oscar movie, and Stella says, well, if it's so great, why won't anyone else fund it for you? And he's honest and says, I had one little report of an unsafe workplace by an actress, and now all of a sudden I'm Harvey Weinstein. But I'm telling you, this could be good for both of us. You help me fund my movie, and then I give it to UBN. People are going to love it. It's going to be content. But for Stella, she's not remotely interested. She tells him everything at UBN is good. And he laughs and tells her, I saw Alex yesterday. I mean, it sounds like the drama off the TV is better than the drama on the TV. They then start trading insults back and forth a little bit. Corey saying, you only have the job because of me. You should probably listen to me if you want to keep it. And Stella saying, oh, this hurts because you're irrelevant now. It ends with just Stella leaving, Corey sitting there dumbfounded about how Stella didn't take this great opportunity. After the meeting, she heads to her place where she ends up hooking up with Miles. They start talking about the Alex situation, about how Alex is desperate at this point. She knows that they're going to try to fire her. And then Miles says, I might be able to get Corey off your ass. Me and him go way back. I know where all the bodies are. And then they hook up, and I'm just going to say it. Stella Bach, you look like a snack this season. I mean, yeah, what's up? DMs are open. Miles is going to set up a meeting with Corey the next night and try to poke and prod and see if he can help out his mistress. The next day, however, at UBN, Chris's busy schedule is becoming an issue at home. Her daughter has a recital that day, and even though Chris has a packed schedule, she assures her daughter, I will be there, don't worry. This, however, becomes a problem when Chris goes to leave. She tells Mia and Ben, look, I'll be in and out 45 minutes tops, and they're not happy. But it becomes a problem when Chris finds out that her car won't be able to take her because the streets are shut down thanks to a protest. Chris is like, damn, what am I going to do? And then she sees her shoes, and she goes, I'll just run. I mean, I'm an Olympic runner. And she literally runs to the school. Only when she gets there, she encounters a school security guard that is aiming for a job with the Secret Service because even though she is very recognizable, he won't let her in without ID. For whatever reason, she doesn't do the, you probably should Google me. That's the ID, but she's distraught because she's letting her daughter down. She promised her daughter she would be there, and now she's not going to be able to have her daughter see her in the crowd. And she's really upset. And when she gets back to the station, Mia's also upset because this took a lot longer than 45 minutes. And it cost a lot of people time and money, and it made Mia look bad. And Mia wants an apology, but Chris isn't going to apologize for picking her kids over work. The fact is, Mia's pretty cold about this whole situation. She's not very understanding about what Chris, being a mother, is going through. They don't really get anywhere with this, though. They just kind of argue and go their separate ways. Alex is also having a tough day in the office. When she gets there, her computers are being seized for the investigation, but she can't spend too much time on it because she has to leave. Her assistant let her know that there's someone named Lizzie Reynolds that Alex wants to meet with in the city, and she's going to be in the city for a few hours. But as Alex goes to leave, that college student that her dad told her about, writing a story about her dad becoming the dean, she shows up at quite possibly the worst time. And Alex doesn't exactly want to do the interview, but she's going to after the girl says, yeah, your dad said you might want to back out. So the girl gets into Alex's car, and they start heading up to the city as the girl starts asking questions about her dad. As the girl asks these questions about Alex's dad, Alex is trying very hard not to show her true feelings about her father and give the PC answer, but she's also really stressed out because traffic isn't moving. This political protest has shut down all of the city. And finally, Alex has enough of it and just gets out of the car and starts walking. That's when she sees a sign that says, we're being gaslit, and what Corey said clicks. Then she realizes she has a platform right there. She whips out her phone and starts reporting live. As she's doing so, somebody throws oil on her. But she starts interviewing this guy who hates mainstream media, but she starts interviewing him about why he's there. And it's all about oil cover-ups, and it sounds a lot like what Bradley received via that shady text message. During this protest, though, the cops end up throwing tear gas into the crowd. Alex ends up getting hit with it. But a lot of people saw. That includes the bro, whose interview with Alex was supposed to be that night, but Alex ended up blowing him off. But even though Alex blew him off, the bro is very complimentary of the reporting job that Alex did. The guy she interviewed ended up being 100% factually correct. And Alex gets more good news that night when she has that meeting with Celine, and Celine tells her, yeah, we looked into it, and you're right. It was a deepfake. They think it may have been the Iranians as retaliation, but the fact is they're not quite sure who did it. Now their name's been cleared, Alex is able to get back on the news, and she goes on the morning show the next day with Yanko and Bradley and starts breaking down the protest, her feelings on going in the streets, the interview, all of it. But then Bradley notices something in the video of the guy that Alex was interviewing. It's his t-shirt. Bradley recognized the t-shirt from the text message that she got from this shady individual, because one of the kids in one of the videos was wearing a similar t-shirt. And it's got Bradley completely flustered. Once the morning show wraps that day, Bradley gets a phone call, and it's Chip. Chip did a deep dive into some old emails, and sure enough, there was a cover-up at UBN, or back then it was UBA, and it was mainly Fred Micklin. The story about the oil companies and poisoning the water, that was swept under the rug. But he's got more good news. He's pretty sure he knows exactly who's texting Bradley. Based on some of the spelling of the words, he thinks that the person is British. There's only one person that fits the criteria, someone who would have been in those meetings and British, and that's Claire, Yanko's old girlfriend. She sued UBA for Hannah's death, so she has an axe to grind. It makes perfect sense. Now it's a matter of tracking down exactly where Claire is. And then finally, we'll finish up with Corey. He had that meeting with Miles. Miles was doing his best to talk Corey out of returning to UBN, but then Corey got the break he was looking for. He saw a lighter that he recognized because Stella had the exact same lighter at their meeting the previous night. And he's been able to quickly figure out that Stella and Miles are having an affair. So the next morning he calls Stella, and Stella's real cocky at first until Corey tells her, yeah, I know about your affair with Miles, the head of the board's husband. So here's how this is going to play out. I no longer want money for my movie. I want a development deal with UBN, an office, a suite, the works. And Stella's just left there, dumbfounded, shook, and not a lot of options. In episode 3, Bradley's rough stint at UBN continues. I mean, Friday's show is a disaster, but it's because her entire focus is on this Wolf River story that she's trying, along with Chip, to track down. But unfortunately, her poor performances are starting to stack up, and the staff is noticing. They all like Bradley, but she kind of sucks right now. It's pretty clear to everybody that she's just not really focused. So when the show wraps up and she takes a phone call, Mia runs out and says, yo, we're supposed to talk about next week's stories. But Bradley says, oh, yeah, I'll talk to you later about it. And they set up a meeting, but the reason why Bradley was trying to get out of there is because Chip had texted her right after the show saying, I found Claire. So Bradley jets out of there. She, along with Chip, head to the police precinct where Claire was being held, and when Claire walks out, they rush up to her. Claire wants really nothing to do with them, but Bradley says, Claire, I know it was you. I know you're the one sending me this stuff. What is going on? And eventually, Claire agrees to talk to both of them. She didn't want anything to do with Chip, that's for sure, because she kind of blamed Chip for not going all in on the story. But as Chip pointed out, I was busy blowing the cover on Mitch Kessler. And as Bradley pointed out, if you want my help with this thing, he's coming along with. So Bradley, Chip, and Claire all head to Bradley's apartment. Meanwhile, back at UBN, Mia went up to corporate to complain about Bradley's poor performance. And by corporate, I mean Alex. And Alex says, yeah, I saw it. It's bad. I mean, I told Mia this was a bad idea. And I know that you went down and you made your pitch to Bradley, but it's not working out. And Mia says, look, I don't disagree with you. I mean, what I care about is a good show. But the thing that Mia really cares about is the fact that she is doing her final interview that day for the head of news, a job that she was promised for the past 2 years by Stella. So she's stressed out because the product on the air isn't great, and she's just on edge that she'll once again get passed over. But Alex assures her, Mia, you're the best person for this job, and me, along with Stella, will fight for you. So it makes Mia feel a little bit better. After the meeting with Mia, Alex has to meet with both Stella and Celine because her little story about this environmental group that she decided to post without clearance has really backfired on UBN. The guy that those environmentalists were going after in that protest was a guy named Zeke Pemberton, who just so happens to be a very big sponsor of UBN. And when the story broke, it made him look really bad, which is making him rethink whether or not he wants to re-up his contract with UBN. So Celine and Stella tell her, look, we understand that this is a tough spot for you because you did report the news, but we need you to go hat in hand and meet with this guy and apologize. And Celine has a pretty good idea of how she's going to do that. She's going to utilize Miles because Miles knows Zeke from selling art to him. There's a big environmental expo going on, so Alex and Miles are going to head there, and hopefully Alex's apology will get Zeke to re-up his contract. When Alex and Miles do arrive, though, they get in, they quickly find Zeke. Miles introduces Zeke to Alex, and you can tell that Zeke is not too thrilled. As Alex, however, starts to sort of apologize, she gets a blast from the past when Paul Marks walks up, and it throws Alex completely off her game. She was not expecting to see Paul Marks at this thing, and she hasn't seen him in 2 years. It's to the point where Alex actually has to excuse herself to the bathroom to collect herself because she's so shook by seeing her ex. She, however, is not the only one in the bathroom. There's another woman named Ava Carrillo. I probably butchered that name, so hit thumbs down for that. And as it turns out, Ava and Alex did a conference together a few years ago, so they're sort of acquaintances, and Alex quickly says hello to her, finds out that Ava is the keynote speaker, even though she's really only doing it to get something out of it. She agreed to do it because those throwing this thing, aka the billionaires, have agreed to fund a refugee situation. Her family were refugees. It works out for everybody. When Alex walks out of the bathroom, Miles walks up and he can tell that something's going on. Alex keeps looking at Paul Marks. Paul Marks keeps looking at Alex. So he asks, is there still something going on between you two? But Alex says no. She tells Miles, I'm going to go say hello to those people. I just want to get the hell out of here as quickly as possible. I need to make one more run at Zeke Pemberton, and then we'll leave. Eventually, though, Alex, as she's talking to these two people, Paul Marks decides to interrupt, pull her aside, and have an uncomfortable conversation that Alex was trying to avoid. The conversation, though, is a business proposal. There's a lot of bickering at first between these two. It's pretty clear that they were in a relationship and they are exes, but eventually Paul gets to the proposal, which is Zeke Pemberton is pretty sure that Alex's, quote, friends, aka the environmentalists outside, blew up an oil rig and a few people died. The story was never really run at full capacity, so Zeke has agreed that if Alex and UBN run the story and kind of even the playing field a bit, then he will re-up the contract. Paul then sends Alex the file that he has on the story, but Alex is a little skeptical about why exactly Paul Marks is doing this, and he says, well, I want to deal with Zeke, so it's a win-win. I could use a win, you could use a win. It's really that simple. But as Paul is trying to convince Alex that he doesn't have these ulterior motives, they get interrupted by Ava, who is asking Paul, hey, do you have my glasses? And that's when it clicks with Alex that Paul and Ava are an item. And now she's even more shook. She once again can't focus, and she certainly can't make her run at Zeke Pemberton to smooth things over between him and the network. On top of it, her alarm goes off to remind her that she has to have Mia's back in this interview process, but she has to call Mia and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make it. Don't worry, though. You're going to crush it, and we have your back. You'll be all right. Now, not too far away, downtown, you've got Bradley and Chip trying to find out from Claire exactly what she knows about the situation, because so far, Bradley's investigation has come up pretty short. And Claire tells her, I gave you everything I have, but there's something here. The three of them, though, aren't getting anywhere, and eventually Chip pulls Bradley outside to have a conversation with her, where he basically tells her, look, Claire's got a grudge. She's rich, she's bored, I really don't think there's anything here. The EPA cleared Zeke Pemberton and the group of any wrongdoing. However, Bradley does think there's something there, and as the two are squabbling over it, they hear the door close, and they quickly realize that Claire has taken off. Again. However, Claire did leave Bradley with something. She texted her a file on her cell phone, and it was a UBN payout. One of the things that Chip was really suspicious of was that UBN just buried the story. He didn't quite buy that. But there was an executive at the time that Claire said did bury the story, and that executive is named Beth Ann Hines. She left UBN shortly after. Chip just thought it was the Mitch Kessler situation. She's always had a good relationship with Chip. But this file that Claire sent to Bradley has Beth Ann receiving a $2 million payout, indicating that she got $2 million to bury the story. As they're going over this file, though, Bradley gets a text message from Mia saying, hey, are you coming? Because they have the meeting to go over the stories for next week. So Bradley says, crap, I'm going to be late. Okay, Chip, go up to Connecticut, meet with Beth Ann, see if you can find anything about this story. I got to get back to work. However, when Bradley does get back to work, Mia is not willing to talk about the stories for next week. She rips into her. She tells Bradley, point blank, you have been a disappointment since you come back here. You've made me look bad, and now I have the biggest interview of my life, and I'm going to get ready for that. Because you weren't ready to get ready for next week. So, I'll talk to you later. It's a shock to Bradley, but she's forced to just tuck her tail between her legs and walk out. As Bradley's leaving, she gets a really surprising text message from Corey Ellison asking her, hey, can we meet? I'm in town. And she hasn't seen Corey in 2 years since the whole UBN investigation about their relationship. But she agrees. So her investigation with the whole Wolf River situation, it's been put on hold because now she has plans that night. As for Mia, she headed up to do that interview process. She was doing it, though, with Celine, and it didn't go great. While it's true that Mia had the support of both Stella and Alex, she certainly didn't have the support of Celine. Celine didn't think that Mia's vision for the future was quite there. She thought that Mia was content with just doing the same old news, and Celine didn't find that entertaining. And Mia did push back on this. But to Celine, she needed to move on. So when it came time to actually talk about the decision with the board, Stella did actually go to bat for Mia, saying she's the most qualified, it's not even close, whereas Celine, she wanted Ben, the guy that was all about AI and had kind of roped in the Olympics. It got to the point where Stella actually asked the board to step outside so that her and Celine could talk about it privately, where Stella told her, Ben isn't ready for this. But Celine had a little bit of a trump card. Because earlier in the day, Stella had just casually brought up that she was about to close a deal with an independent filmmaker that would be great for them, and it just so happened to be Corey Ellison. And of course, Celine was a little suspect about that because you're letting the wolf back in the hen house. That made no sense. Without Stella's knowledge, Celine decided to go meet with Corey and kind of hear him out, and she figured that there was something that Corey might have had on Stella as he tried to weasel his way back into UBN. So, Celine used that trump card. She told Stella, look, the hiring process, yeah, that's up to you. But I think some new blood and some old blood would be good. So if you want to close the deal with Corey, I'm all for it, as long as the new blood is Ben. But again, it's ultimately up to you. And that puts Stella between a rock and a hard place because she can't have her affair getting out, but yet she wants to do right by her friend and the person she promised this job to for the past 2 years. Unfortunately, though, as I said, she can't afford the affair to get out. Later that night, she ends up calling Mia to her office, and she excitedly tells her, look, I'm going to give you a raise, and you're going to hold the new guy's feet to the fire, and in 6 months, he's going to flame out, and that job is yours. Of course, Mia is very upset, but she gets even more upset when she finds out that they're hiring Ben, a person that doesn't have the respect of the staff and hasn't actually done news. She's pissed off at everybody, Stella more than anyone, because she thought that Stella was her friend. And Stella tries to tell her how tough this decision was for her, but Mia doesn't want to hear that. Mia lashes out. And it pisses off Stella so much that as Mia is leaving, she tells Stella the same thing, basically verbatim, that Celine was telling to the board. That Ben is simply better. His vision is better. And that while, yes, Stella is her friend, she's also her boss, and she has to do what's right by the company, so that's why they're hiring Ben. But that backfires completely. Because Mia looks at her and says, you're not my friend, and oh, by the way, you're not my boss. I quit. And she walks out. And this is so upsetting to Stella, she actually bawls her eyes out because she knows it's not the right decision. Of course, none of this has been run by the other exec, Alex, who is still at the conference, where she once again has an awkward conversation with Paul because their last conversation was interrupted by Paul's new girlfriend. It was awkward. Paul apologizes. Alex understands, but they quickly get into it. Alex telling Paul, you use people, and I'm just wondering how you're going to use Ava because you used me. And Paul simply saying, I'm not trying to use anyone. I'm trying to help you in this situation, but you're too hard-headed. And eventually Paul just says, you know what the problem is? You're mad that I found somebody. And she admits, yeah, I'm mad that you found somebody first. That's what I'm mad at. You found someone before I found someone. It's awkward all around. However, his deal, well, she is looking into it. She did send the files to fact checkers back at UBN, and they're doing their sourcing. Alex continues to stay at the conference waiting for the confirmation that this story from Zeke Pemberton is in fact factual. They can run it on UBN. She can give Zeke the good news and he can re-up his contract. And while she's doing so, she's listening to Ava's speech. It's a pretty good one. But that's when Miles walks up and says, hey, what did you say to Zeke? He decided to come to reason and he's going to rethink this whole thing. You don't have to run the story. He's going to re-up. And Alex is shocked. She says, nothing. I didn't make a deal with him. And that's when she texts Paul, realizing that Paul must have spoke to Zeke. And she says, what are you after in this whole thing? But Paul just texts back, nothing. And that's it. Now, as for the former head of UBN, Corey, he meets with Bradley. And it's awkward at first, but they quickly get back into the swing of things. It's always been awkward between these two. Who are we kidding? But the real reason why Corey wanted to meet is because he needs to make sure that if he goes ahead with this deal with UBN, that the feds aren't going to come after him. So he needs to know if Bradley, having met with the feds and not being in prison, if she gave them anything on Corey. And she tells him, I gave him something, but it wasn't on you. You're clean. You can go ahead with whatever it is you have going on. And that's when he explains, well, what I have going on would have me coming back to UBN. Would that be awkward for you? And it wouldn't be. I mean, Bradley cleared him of any wrongdoing because he didn't do anything wrong. But then sexual tension finally takes over. It only took, 4 seasons? But these two finally hook up. Finally. And as Bradley and Corey were hooking up, her partner in crime, Chip, headed up to Connecticut, meeting with Beth Ann. He starts off by asking, why'd you leave UBA? I was always curious. And she tells him, it's a lot of reasons. I can't really tell you, though. I signed an NDA. But that's when he presents her with the payout. And she just simply says, I don't know what this is. I'm not sure. And he thinks that she does. He thinks there's a reason why they decided to meet in a public park and not at her house. And she simply tells him, I can't help you. But then she pulls out her phone and says, I just want to make sure I have your cell phone correctly. And she writes down, go check out the UBA archives, October 2018, Wolf River. And she shows it to him. That's the little morsel that made this whole trip to Connecticut worth it for Chip. In episode 4, the first morning show without Mia is stressful for everybody. Everybody's just hoping that she ends up coming back. In fact, Alex actually starts her day by calling Mia, trying to get her to reconsider, until she's interrupted by her father, which comes as a big surprise because, again, these two don't have the best relationship. And he didn't come to just check in, see how she's doing. He came because he is pissed off. He demands to know what exactly Alex told that reporter, Justice. And Alex says, I don't know. I mean, it was a chaotic day for everybody. But the reason he's asking is because the student newspaper is going to publish a report from Justice saying that his first book was plagiarism. And Alex goes, whoa, I never hinted at that. These two kind of go back and forth. Her dad is clearly stressed out about the situation because the optics are going to ruin any chance he has of becoming dean of that college. Even if it comes out later that it's not true, by that point, they've already found a replacement. But Alex does ask him, Dad, is it true? And kind of. He basically poached the idea from one of his TAs way back in the day. Now that is coming back to bite him, and he's not handling it well. So Alex says, look, I will call Justice. I'll try to see if maybe I can talk to her and talk her out of publishing the story. And she does that. She calls up Justice, and Justice is thrilled to talk to Alex Levy because, Alex Levy is a journalistic god. But when it comes to the story, Justice says, yeah, unfortunately, it's going to run. It's too late to edit. But the editor does owe me a favor. So I'll tell you what. If you get me a job at UBN, I'll call in that favor. And that story goes away. And Alex is stunned that Justice is pulling this. She starts doing the journalistic integrity thing, saying, whoa, this isn't how it works. But Justice says, oh, no, this is exactly how it works. I have leverage. I'm using the leverage. So you have until the end of the day to get me a job or else the story runs. And reluctantly, Alex ends up texting her assistant, hey, set up a meeting with the guy that's in charge of the fellowship program. She then heads into the office where that day's morning show is going to be a big day for Yanko because he's planning on proposing to his girlfriend. Live on air. He's stressed out about it. There's doves, there's dancers, there's the whole 9 yards, and he's practiced and choreographed the whole thing. It really couldn't come at a worse time, though, because of the fact that Mia is no longer in the control room. The morning show that day is going to be run by a tandem of Isabella and Layla, with really Layla running point. But because of the fact that they don't have Mia, and they relied so heavily on her, everybody's nervous for that day. On top of that, you still have Bradley, who is clearly distracted. Before the show, she's in her dressing room looking up the Wolf River deposition in the UBN archives, but somebody wiped it. It's gone. Bradley ends up calling Chip and giving him this news and saying, we have to find the lawyer who is helping these people. He'll have the depositions. He'll have all of that information. So while Bradley is doing the morning show, Chip is going to try to track this lawyer down. But as she's on the phone with Chip, she gets a text from Corey saying, hey, I'm in the back office. Why don't you come stop down? And she does that. And it is very flirtatious. It is dimly lit. It is pretty clear that these two want to go for a round two, but they're going to have to hold off on it. You know, because she's got work. And the reason that Corey's there is to close his deal that Stella and Celine agreed to when Stella named Ben the head of news. So after this very flirtatious meeting in this back office, Bradley goes to do the morning show and Corey heads up the elevator and waits to meet with Celine and the lawyers. While he's waiting, however, he decides to peek around to his old office, which is now Stella's office. And as he's sitting there, Celine walks in. She finds it funny that he's reacclimated himself to the position. And when he asks, hey, where's Stella? It turns out she's not even in the building. She's at a conference about AI, which seems to be UBN's big thing now. Corey, though, isn't really focused on who's there, who's not. He just wants to get the deal signed because he's under a lot of pressure being a producer of this movie to find a distributor for it. But Celine says, no, that can wait. Tell me your vision for this place. Like, if you were still in charge, what would you do? Corey immediately straightens up and says, you have to fix the public perception. I mean, the merger happened 2 years ago and people are still calling this place UBA. The second thing is that Stella doesn't do enough press, so people think she's just a DEI hire. Clearly, by the way, that isn't the case. And then there's this AI initiative that you guys are pushing. Most people don't understand it, and the people that do, they're terrified of it. So what you need to do is focus on big movies, because the movies will bring in the money that you can focus on big reporting, if you still even want to do that. Now, what you guys need is an Oscar. That'll attract big directors, big actors, and that's what I can give you. She kind of just cracks up because Corey's sales pitch is so Corey, if that makes sense. And then she says, you know what, let me just show you around to what we've done with this place. As they start walking around down on the control room floor, in the middle of a commercial break, Alex gets a phone call from Chip. She's a little surprised because Chip knows that she's on air, but he says, no, I'm in your dressing room right now. You have to show up. So Bradley actually abandons a segment that she's supposed to do and leaves it to Yanko, who bombs. But the information that Chip had was really interesting. He was able to track down that lawyer. And as it turns out, once that lawyer started digging into Wolf River, a smear campaign was plastered all over town about this guy, saying that he had made up a bunch of his cases and his successes and all of it. And it got so bad for him that he actually took his own life. And then suddenly, after he died, all the stories about him, all those negative stories, they went away. And because he died, the class action lawsuit against Wolf River also went away. So Bradley tells Chip, we got to find out who was orchestrating the smear campaign. But that's when they're interrupted by Alex, who walks in the dressing room and is shocked to see Bradley and Chip talking very secretively right under her nose. And they have to come clean. They tell Alex that they have this story that they're working on. And unfortunately, while they wanted to tell her about it, they couldn't because it's about UBN and covering up a big story. Alex is livid. She's livid at Bradley for not telling her about this, especially when she finds out that Bradley has been working on it since the moment that she arrived back. But she's also mad at Chip because, well, when is she not mad at Chip? Bradley, however, has to get back to the studio, so she kind of gets a pass, and Chip is the one who's supposed to fill Alex in on everything that they're doing. And while she's walking back to the set, she decides to see if she can find out exactly who started the smear campaign by calling up Ashley from Eagle News, because Eagle News was the one that were really running the smear campaign. And she asks her, look, I need some information. She explains the whole situation, and she says, I need to know who exactly gave you this information. I need to know who your source was. And Ashley says, yeah, I'll tell you my source, but I want information. I want to know what exactly all that hubbub was outside of the UBN office. But because Bradley wasn't there, she doesn't know. And Ashley says, well, you need to find me something or I'm not going to give you anything. So now it's going to be on Bradley to figure out what exactly she can trade to get the source. Bradley then rejoins Yanko on set. They go through their segment. But the first commercial break, Alex storms up to Bradley and rips into her. She can't believe that her source is Claire Conway. And when Yanko hears that, his entire mood shifts. I mean, this is the day he's supposed to propose to another woman, and he hasn't thought about Claire in a while. He can't believe that she's back in town. It's as if he's seen a ghost. And it's pretty clear that Bradley figured this might happen. That's why she didn't mention anything to Yanko. Seemed like Yanko had finally gotten over Claire, but now just hearing her name, it's got him thinking. He, however, doesn't have much time to think because when they get back on air, they have breaking news. The first day that Mia is out, they have to deal with breaking news. It's all over social media, but there was a plane that took off from JFK and the door flew open. People on board were live streaming it. They were freaking out. They all thought that they were going to die. So the entire landscape of the show shifts to this story on this plane. And because it's such a big story, because Mia isn't there, Alex actually goes into the control room to try to help out Layla and Isabella. The thing is, Alex has never done this before. She's always on the other side of the camera. But hey, the more hands on deck, maybe it'll help out. During the first break, Isabella and Alex go up to the desk. They start filling Bradley and Yanko in on what they know so far. But unfortunately, they tell Yanko, we're going to have to cut your proposal. And he is adamant, no, you can't do that. He starts making his pitch on, hey, if this plane crashes, people are going to want something to be happy about. But they say, Yanko, we have to do it another day, man. I'm sorry. And he's really upset about it. But he's a professional, so the show goes on as all the producers, they just try to find anybody that could talk about the situation. Experts, loved ones, roommates, whomever. The thing is, because this is such a stressful situation, the first day without Mia, Layla doesn't exactly handle it the best. I mean, at one point she yells, anyone that doesn't need to be in here, get out. And that's when Chip shows his face. Now, to some people, like Renna, she's thrilled to see Chip. But to other people, i.e. Isabella and Layla, they don't want to see him at all. But since Alex is in there, she says, hey, can you call any of your sources and find out exactly what's going on? So because he's got nothing else to do, he decides to help out. At the end of the day, the plane ends up making an emergency landing, and UBN was a big part of it. Turned out a lot of the people on the plane were watching the morning show on the headrest, so loved ones were actually sending messages in that they were projecting onto the screen in the background so that they could see it just in case things went south, i.e. like legitimately south, like they crashed. You get the idea. When the show wraps up that day, Yanko is pretty upset that he wasn't able to propose. He goes to his fiance, he apologizes, but it turns out she already knew that it was going to happen. I guess Yanko has a horrible poker face, but the Claire Conway thing is still in his head. The first thing this guy did when the show wrapped up was look at her number and look at her face. So when his would-be fiance says, hey, can I see the ring? He says, you know what, let's just wait on it. Let me actually surprise you. And you get the sense that that's not really why he's doing it. For the rest of the staff, though, they decide to eat the cake that they got Yanko and his would-be fiance, Ariana. But for Layla, she is eating the cake and she's upset. Upset at her performance, upset at how she handled things, and she's really, really hoping that Mia comes back. She actually texted her, hey, we missed you today. But what she's truly worried about is that if they don't fix this quick, they're going to bring Chip back, and she doesn't want that. Now, as for Chip, he stayed in the control room with Alex, and they caught up a little bit. She congratulated him on his documentary. She acted like she saw it. He could see right through the fact that she didn't watch it. But eventually, he just wishes her luck and gets ready to head out. Now, as for Alex, she goes and she meets with Bradley. She wants to talk about this whole situation and kind of rip her a new one again about not filling her in on all of this. And the two go back and forth a little bit. Bradley pitching her case on why she did it and why this story is so important, and Alex just wanting to be filled in on it. Eventually, though, the two come to an understanding that Bradley has 2 weeks to find an actual source with this story, or else it's over. You just got to let it go. Once Alex leaves Bradley's dressing room, she heads up to her office, and she's still pondering what exactly she's going to do about this whole Justice wanting a job, trying to use the information she has on her dad to get it. And finally, she comes to the conclusion that she's not going to do business like that. She has to call up her dad and give him the bad news that they were trying to blackmail her to get a job, and she's not willing to do it, and he is pissed. He thought that in this instance, it was a big enough deal where she would just let it slide, but the fact that she's not, yeah, he's pissed. But down the hall, though, you've got Celine still showing Corey around, still avoiding the lawyers until finally Corey says, what exactly are we doing? And she pulls him in another room. he point blank asks her, "Are you bringing me in to take over for Stella?" And she says, "No, think bigger," because she's thinking bigger. Corey's able to realize that Celine wants to be CEO, not just the head of the board. And in order to do that, she has to find a way to get the other members out. So she tells Corey, "I need to know what you have on Stella. And if you give that to me, I'm going to give you $200 million to start your own movie studio with UBN." And that is exactly what Corey needs. It's not just distribution, it's his own studio. But Corey isn't willing to stab Stella in the back. He just looks at Celine and says, "Yeah, thanks, but I'm not doing that." And he walks out, probably killing his deal. As he is heading out, though, he runs into Chip, and the two start getting reacquainted a little bit, saying, "Hey, how are you? Catching up," the usual. But then they start talking about the movie industry because Chip has that documentary coming out. And he mentions how it's so difficult finding distribution, that he's lucky because the fact that the documentary is on the film circuit, he's got a lot of distributors coming after him. What he doesn't realize is he's giving Corey the reasons on why he needs to go back up to Celine's office and stab Stella in the back. And that's exactly what he does. After he's done talking to Chip, he heads back up the elevator, finds Celine, and tells her, "Miles and Stella are having an affair." And that is not at all what Celine thought Corey had on Stella. You can tell she's hurt, but she says, "Okay, I will start drawing up the paperwork on your deal." But once Corey leaves, she sheds a couple of tears, and then she just tries to put on a strong face. Corey, meanwhile, heads back downstairs and waits for Bradley, where, thanks to Alex, Bradley finally has something that she can trade for Ashley's source. It's the file that Paul Marks gave her. Because after Bradley mentioned that she needs this source from Ashley, Alex said, "Oh, okay, I have something and we're not going to run it. And here, use this, but it better work." And when Bradley calls up Ashley agrees. "Yeah, that's fine. Okay, we'll run that." And she sends over the source that she had on this whole lawyer situation. And when Bradley starts looking through the files, she notices a very interesting name as the law firm that tipped off Eagle News. Immediately, she calls up Chip, because now she knows exactly who killed the Wolf River story. The law firm was Earl's, Corey's fixer. The timeline matches up with Corey coming in. It was Corey who killed the Wolf River story. And as both Chip and Bradley are coming to this realization, they're both shocked. They didn't think Corey had it in him. But it gets worse for Bradley when she leaves her dressing room, and there's Corey, waiting for her, smiling. In episode 5, Bradley goes out with Corey that night and acts business as usual. She doesn't want to tip him off to the fact that she knows that he was behind the Wolf River situation, but she also wants to get some evidence. So as they're at this rooftop bar and they're hanging out, she says, "Hey, can you go get me a drink?" As I'm using air quotes here, looking at pictures of his new movie. She's actually searching his email for Wolf River, anything related to it. And nothing pops up. But then she searches the attorney's name and she does find some information. And there is a photo of the attorney with some random woman. And Bradley doesn't know who she is, but Bradley takes a photo of Corey's screen. And then at that point, Corey's coming back, so she has to X out of everything. The next day, though, when Bradley shows up for TMS, things have changed a little bit. Instead of Yanko being there, it's going to be Chris Hunter. And the reason why Chris is replacing Yanko for this particular episode is the fact that even though Chris is supposed to be on everything involving the Olympics, a story has recently come out saying that Chris doped in order to get her gold medal. So she wants to go on TMS just to show that she's got nothing to hide. She pressures Ben, and then eventually Ben, now being the head of news, gives in. But Ben making sudden changes to TMS is now becoming a trend that is really, really weighing on both Isabella and especially Layla, who is now taken over as the head producer because Mia's out. Layla, like many people, desperately wants Mia to come back, and that's the thing. That's the general consensus around the staff, so much so that they're putting up posters that say, "Wanted, Mia Jordan, bring back the boss." Not the best look for Ben. Even with all the stress, though, Layla, Isabella, the staff of TMS, they go through that day's episode. Chris shows her face, never bringing up doping, just showing her face. That's what she wanted. But at the end of the episode, Ben finds Layla and says, "Oh, by the way, we need to change some things tomorrow for TMS." And again, this is a trend with him, and it's not a good one. It's an example of why this guy shouldn't have gotten the job in the first place. He doesn't realize what he's doing to the staff. And Layla tries to tell him, hey, this isn't right. I mean, you're really putting on a crappy product by doing this, but he gives the whole boss speech of, oh, I got faith in you. While he's doing this, by the way, he's taking down one of those Mia posters and he's tearing it up. But Layla has reached a breaking point. She goes to the top. She goes and talks to Alex and vents her frustration about what Ben is doing. So Alex brings in Ben and says, dude, you got to stop. He makes his pitch on why he's doing the things he is doing, but then he brings up the fact that these posters are up. And then he asks the tough question. Do you think that she should have gotten this job? And Alex is really good. I mean, she dances around giving an actual answer, which of course is, yeah, Mia did deserve the job. But she also tells him, yeah, we need Mia. And then she's saved by her assistant, who tells Ben, hey, your assistant's looking for you. And then she tells Alex, hey, the Times picked up that story about your dad. Oh, and also, Joy Taylor from Defy Media called, and she's looking for a reference for Mia. And this is the last thing that Alex wants. She doesn't want Mia taking another job. And it's worth mentioning that Mia crushed this interview. I mean, it seems like it's her job to lose. And that's when Alex goes all Alex. Because Alex doesn't want Mia to actually take another position, she wants to convince Mia to come back to TMS. She basically bribes this Joy Taylor person into not hiring Mia, telling Joy that she'll do some benefits and fundraisers if she doesn't hire her. It's a pretty shitty move. And it's one that when Mia finds out about it via her agent, she does not handle it well, as you can imagine. In fact, that night, she actually calls up Andre and meets with him. She really just wants to vent her frustration about the fact that Alex Levy still thinks that she has control over Mia's life, her career. But it's also a booty call, let's be real. And it's not the only booty call that takes place that night. I don't necessarily know, actually, if you can call this a booty call, but Chris and Marcus had a date plan that night. The problem is Chris's little attempt to dispel any of these doping allegations by simply going on TMS and showing her face didn't really work. In fact, the story continues to grow. It's gotten to the point where some of her sponsors are actually pulling out of the Chris Hunter business, which is stressing not only Marcus out as her manager and husband, but also Chris out. Chris wonders aloud how exactly the person who started this rumor got the information. And Marcus says, don't worry, I handled it, which tips Chris off to the fact that Marcus knows who it is. And Marcus says, look, I sent a cease and desist. Let's give them time to reply to it. But in the meantime, I will tell you who it is if you promise to let this thing go. And it turns out the person is named Tunde Johnston. And yeah, Chris knows her because they were on the Olympic qualifying team together. They went to school together. Chris hadn't spoken to her in years, but that night it changes. Because Chris and Marcus do go out, they get drunk, they have a good date night, but before they actually hook up, Chris sneaks off and the alcohol gets to her. She rings up Tunde and she reams her out. I mean, she curses her out for even messing with her and dragging her name through the mud. The problem is, Tunde listened to it completely sober and released that audio, to which sports publications, including the Bros show, picked it up and just started mocking Chris, which didn't sit well with Alex. After one such segment, Alex storms into the Bros show and says, do you realize what you're doing? I mean, Chris is one of our own. But the Bro actually makes a good pitch. He says, look, this is news. And my audience demands that I hold people accountable, which is what I'm doing. For Alex, she just thinks he's being a dick. But to the Bro, he thinks this is fair and impartial journalism. And to be quite frank, he doesn't really care that Chris Hunter works in the building because he reminds Alex, oh, my ad revenue pays for your salary. After unsuccessfully trying to get the Bro to stop talking about the Chris Hunter situation, Alex goes and checks on Chris, and even though Chris is putting on a strong face, it's obvious that she is bothered by this. When Chris goes to leave the office that day, there is a swarm of media outside ready to just snap her photo, ask her questions, but there's also Mia, who showed up because she wants to clear the air with Chris, but she also wants to help her out. Their last interaction wasn't a good one, but she also is aware that no one in that building is actually being there for Chris when she needs it the most. And Mia thinks that she can be that person. So they decide to get in the car together and ride off and talk. Mia apologizing for how their last conversation went, but then she comes up with an idea. go on the bro show. Yeah, your audio leaking isn't a good look, but just own it. I mean, this country, for the most part, is okay if you just own your own shit. So do that. I'm telling you, it'll work in your benefit. And after thinking about it, that's exactly what Chris is going to do. The next day, she's going to go on the bro show. As for the other member of the morning show, Bradley, she got some surprising news from her agent. A contract extension from TMS. That night, she actually goes and talks to Alex about it, saying, I can't sign an extension right now. I don't want to get involved in the Chris stuff, and not to mention, you don't even want me here. But Alex tells her, no, Bradley, I'm the person who thought of this. I'm the one who told them to extend you. Yeah, I didn't think it would work out, and you drive me nuts, but you're also good for UBN. Bradley, I believe in you. And that's when Bradley says, Alex, maybe you shouldn't. She then reveals to Alex that she slept with Corey, and that Corey is one of the people that was hiding the Fox River situation. Alex is stunned, but also says, look, I mean, if Corey did something, you probably have to step away from the story you're working on, but we don't know what he did. I think what you need to do is call him right now, because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. So Bradley gets on the phone, and she has plans on doing it. She's got Corey on speakerphone, but she can't. I mean, her and Corey set up a date, but when Bradley hangs up, she looks at Alex and says, you know, he deserves to have this conversation in person, so I'm going to give him that. Their date is scheduled for the next night, and Bradley has a little bit of time to figure out how she's going to broach this topic with Corey. But that's the next night. That day is Chris's big interview, and her and Mia step into the UBN office like bad bitches. I mean, they're owning the place. But what they didn't expect was that the bro wasn't going to just interview Chris. He also invited Tunde, who showed up. And as Chris and Tunde are having an awkward conversation in the green room, waiting for their opportunity to go on the air, Chris, first of all, apologizes for the message, but also says to Tunde, we could just go to a bar and do this ourselves. We don't have to be this guy's show pony. And that's when you get to the bottom of why Tunde is doing what she's doing. Chris had canceled a TMS appearance at their old school, a school that Tunde coaches at, and a school that desperately needs the publicity and the funding. And Chris said, yeah, look, we just didn't have time to do it. I mean, we cut the segment. It wasn't anything personal. But to Tunde, it was personal. To Tunde, it's Chris forgetting where she came from. So this, the leaking of information and the rumor that she doped in Rio and London, this is payback. And even though Chris wants to just do this privately, Tunde says, no, you had your chance. We're doing this publicly. It's then time for both women to go on the bros show, and Mia is watching from the outside when she's approached by Ben, who is livid at Mia for pulling this move. Mia, though, looks at Ben and says, you weren't helping her, so I did. This is going to benefit Chris. But that's not the way Ben sees it. He calls Alex and says, look, this is like DEFCON 1. You got to help me out here. You got to do something. But Alex says, they're already on the air. There's nothing we can do. The genie's out of the bottle. So they just have to let the interview go and hope that Chris comes out smelling like roses. The two women go back and forth for a while until Tunde says, I have proof that she doped. And she provides the bro with a photocopy of a prescription for anabolic steroids to Chris Hunter. And the bro looks at it and he says, well, this is the smoking gun. And then he shows it to Chris and says, do you want to comment? And Chris does, in fact, comment. She owns up to it. But the story is not what anyone thought. Chris used steroids not to win her first medal. She won that on her own. Chris used steroids to get back in shape to win her second medal. Because Chris got pregnant and all of her sponsors pulled out. Her and Marcus were broke. And to make matters way worse, Chris went into labor 5 weeks early where they lost her son in the process, Amari. And it was really emotional for both her and her husband. So in order to just get back everything that they had lost, and also to get Chris's mind off of things, she decided to, yes, try steroids. And it worked. I mean, she ended up getting in the best shape of her life. She ended up winning gold, but she also admitted that when she was on the podium hearing the national anthem, she felt like she let everybody down, like it wasn't worth it. This revelation that Chris used steroids to get over the death of her prematurely born baby boy is a lot for everybody. Tunde, the bro, everybody listening. This is a revelation that only her and Marcus knew about. And when the interview ends, for Mia and Chris, now they just have to wait for the court of public opinion to make their verdict. As Chris goes back to her dressing room and talks to her husband about everything that happened, it's really emotional. For Alex, however, she was watching the entire interview in her office, but once it was done, she stormed down and she told the bro, "Did you have any idea what you were doing? I mean, ruining people's lives?" And he says, "Look, I didn't know that was going to be the case. I didn't realize that was the story." But Alex also tells him it was a good interview, because it was. And then she goes and finds Mia. By this point, the court of public opinion has made their choice, and it is very pro Chris Hunter. For Alex, however, she's concerned about the Olympic coverage being screwed up, but Mia says, no, maybe not, because people love it when somebody actually owns their mistakes. Alex, you could probably learn from that. And that's when these two just have it out. Mia going off on Alex for making a decision about Mia's career for her. Alex thinking that she was doing the right thing because, in her words, we have so much more work to do. But it's work that Mia doesn't want to do. And for Alex to tank a recommendation for her own selfish reasons, that's what pisses Mia off the most. They actually get into a big FU match back and forth. Alex failing to realize that she is the pot meeting the kettle in a lot of situations, and Mia finally reminding Alex, yeah, you don't own me. Like, I don't work for you. And me and Chris, we're going to be working together because we make a really good team. Making it known that her and Chris are going to be looking around for other opportunities. Maybe Chris isn't built for UBN anymore. So yeah, it was a bit of a hectic morning in the offices, but that night at the hotel that Corey and Bradley stay in, Bradley goes to Corey's room because they have that date set up, but the date never happens. Because Corey says, it was funny, I was going to make you dinner, but I went into my email to look for the recipe. And you know how when you search for something, it shows you the last bunch of information that was searched. And I saw that you searched for this lawyer's name. I mean, the fact that you told me you wanted to see pictures of my movie, but in reality you were gaining information? Were you using me this entire time? Did you sleep with me just because of a story? And Bradley explains, no, I didn't do that. I mean, I'd already slept with you at the point when I found out that you were involved in this situation. But to Corey, it is a giant breach of privacy. And then they actually get into the Wolf River thing. The Cliff Notes version is Corey was pressured by Fred once he got to the job to get rid of the Wolf River story. And with the EPA clearing the company of any wrongdoing, Corey said, yeah, all right. So he sent his fixer. Having no idea what his fixer was going to do, he never heard anything. He never followed up. Why would he? He was too busy with the Mitch Kessler situation to actually follow up. But when Bradley tells him, well, that lawyer that you sent your fixer after committed suicide, you can tell it really bothers Corey. He's shocked by it. He really didn't have any idea. And the fact that Bradley is insinuating that Corey's actions push this guy to suicide, well, yeah, he loses it on her. I mean, for the first time in 4 seasons, Corey legitimately seems really, really pissed off. He's so adamant that he didn't do anything wrong in this situation that Bradley says, okay, like I believe you, but it's too late. Corey tells her, I had a tough time getting over you the first time, but this time it's going to be way easier. I'm going to need you to leave now. And Bradley's forced to leave his apartment with her tail between her legs. But when she gets back to her apartment, somebody's waiting for her. It's the FBI agent. And he says, we need to talk. So Bradley's night just got worse. In episode 6, Stella has returned and she has a meeting with Celine. Celine never bringing up what she knows about Stella and Marcus's affair. But Stella has come with not so great news. The AI tech that she was looking at in Atlanta, it doesn't really work. I mean, it kind of works, but it's unpredictable. It's kind of all over the place, and it's not going to be ready for the Olympics. And their star host, Chris, is threatening to hold out. She's got a lot of leverage now with the recent interview from the bro. There's a lot of public support behind her, and she's trying to use that leverage. If Chris Hunter won't go to the Olympics, that is going to be a big blow for UBN, especially because they're set to host 300 reporters who are going to question them about the upcoming Olympic Games and UBN's coverage of those games. So it's at the utmost importance that Stella smooth things over with Chris, and more importantly, Chris's people, which now include Mia. Celine reiterates how important it is that they fix this solution and quickly, and then she leaves the office, leaving Stella to essentially do her job. She schedules a meeting later that day with Mia and Marcus, and what Chris wants is editorial control over the coverage, but Stella says that's not happening, that's not a thing. And they point to people like the bro and like Alex Levy, but Stella has reasons for that. The bro basically being such a cash cow that he can do what he wants, and she's not in charge of him anyway because he's not news. And Alex, well, she doesn't have editorial coverage. She's just an executive. That's not really good enough for either Mia or Marcus, and the conversations are really getting nowhere, with Stella basically having nothing to offer these two. These conversations, though, get so contentious that Stella asks Marcus to leave so that her and Mia can just hash it out together. At first, Stella tries to play hardball, but Mia says, No, you brought Corey Ellison back in the building and then gave him a bunch of money and told us that there is none? What is that? Stella tries to point out that Corey will be making movies and it's different, but Mia says, no, it's not different, because when you got this job, you said that things would be different, but in reality, you're no better than the Corey Ellisons of the world. You talked about helping diverse people and helping people of color, but you haven't done any of that. And then she leaves. Stella then has to go break the news to Alex, and she walks down the hall where Alex is in the middle of having a meeting with Corey. Corey has been frazzled ever since Bradley told him about the Wolf River situation and, more importantly, what happened to that lawyer. He's got his assistant looking into any matters, in particular with his fixer and Fred Micklin, but then he goes and talks to Alex about it. He wants to reassure that he had nothing to do with covering up anything. He's convinced that this is yet another hurdle and he's just being attacked for just being him. He can't figure out why. So he's kind of come hat in hand to Alex to just get reassurance that he's not a bad person. And one of the points that he makes is, Alex, you were here. I mean, do you ever remember hearing anything about this Wolf River situation? And she admits, no, I don't. I'll tell you what I do remember. I remember being at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and there were a lot of network people there, and about 2 weeks later, Fred told us that it was you, which was a really curious hiring move because you were the head of entertainment, now you're going to be the head of news. It didn't make much sense at the time. Alex is implying that Corey must have had something on Fred, but he says, no, I didn't have anything on him. I mean, I just got the job. And the reality is Corey never wondered how he got the job. He just gladly took it. But that's when the two were interrupted by Stella, who has to give Alex the bad news regarding Chris. She pulls Alex to the side and says, yeah, look, it doesn't seem like Chris is heading to the Olympics, so we need someone who could stand up on stage with you, and I have an idea. He already said no, but you didn't talk to him. And that person is the bro. It's not a great idea, but it's an idea nonetheless, and he would bring in a much-needed different demographic. So even though Alex hates it, it does make sense, and that night she heads to a comedy club where the bro is performing to pitch him. He ends up noticing her in the crowd during his set, and he shouts her out, but at the end of the set, they get together, and she pitches him on the idea of getting up there with her in Paris, all of that. He still doesn't want to do it. So Alex says, okay, well, what do you want? And what he wants is the debate. He wants to slowly move into politics. He wants people to see him more than just a sports douchebag. So in order to do Paris in the summer, he wants to be promised that he will be doing the debate coverage in November. At first, like many of these proposals, Alex just blows it to the side, but she doesn't have a lot of leverage in this situation, so she tells him, I'm going to think about it. And as the two are having these discussions, the sexual tension is building and building and building and building between these two. Meanwhile, Stella spent her night not too far away in Miles' loft with him, where the pressure of the job and the Olympics and everything, it's just getting to her. And finally she decides, you know what, we need to run away. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Italy? And she's looking up flights. And she's done this thing before, but up until this point, it had kind of been a pipe dream and a joke, but this time she's dead serious, and it forces Miles to pull her aside and say, whoa, we can't do this. The two then get into a little bit of a spat, with Stella saying, you know, it's funny, right now, compared to Celine, I guess I'm easy, but the second you choose me, I become difficult. And Miles is saying, whoa, you say you want more, but that's just an excuse so you can blame me when you end it. You picked me so you'd never really have to choose. You would never even get on that plane. So stop acting like you would. Stella gets so angry, she tells him, don't even call me, and she leaves. First thing that next morning, she meets with Miles' wife, Celine, to discuss their Olympic coverage and what they're going to do. Alex has relayed the information that Bro gave her, his demands, if you will, And Celine says, okay, well, we'll tell him that he can do the coverage, but he'll never actually do the coverage. I mean, the commission's going to shut it down and we can just put our support behind him, but they'll never allow him to actually host a debate. This is a win-win. So just tell him what he wants to hear and send him to Paris. It's set. They're going to be on stage the next day in front of a bunch of the media, and that's going to be the big surprise. The former executive of UBN, Corey, spent most of his day, though, at his mother's place. Because the previous night, he was perusing the internet, and he was thinking about that White House Correspondents' Dinner. He was looking at all the photos from the dinner, and then there was one that really popped out. It was one with Fred Micklin and his mom. And the wheels started turning. Because again, up until this point, he never thought about how he got the job, but now he thinks that maybe his mom had some influence, so he goes to talk to her. And at first, the conversation starts out cordial, but then he shows her the picture and he says, come on, what did you have on Fred? I mean, what did you tell him to get me this job? But over and over again, she tells him, Corey, I didn't have anything on him. I didn't even talk about you at that dinner. I didn't pitch you to Fred. But Corey just does not believe it. This conversation boils and boils and boils until finally tea is spilled, everyone gets angry, and Corey goes in the kitchen where he finds something to distract him. It's an assisted suicide retreat in Switzerland that his mom was looking into, and he's really concerned about it. But as she tells him, Corey, I'm just coming to the acceptance of my life being over. I mean, I'm old. And at that reality that his mother is old and that she is thinking about something so serious, Corey ends up patching things up with his mom, thanking her, and going to leave. But before he does, his mom stops him and says, Corey, I really didn't have anything to tell Fred, but your friend Celine, she sure did. So now Corey's eyes are on Celine. But while Corey's worried about Wolf River, you've still got Bradley and Chip looking into Wolf River. They need to figure out who exactly that woman was in the photo with the lawyer who committed suicide. Bradley put the photo through UBN's search engine. Nothing really popped up, and Chip has an idea. He's got a friend at the Times who might be able to help them out, but he's a little difficult. Either way, Chip calls him up. They meet in a shady alley, and Chip tells him what he needs, and the guy says, okay, I'll do it, but I need something in return. I need a big story. I need you to help me out. Get me some information. So Chip goes to the one person who might be able to give him some dirt that isn't a fan of UBN at the moment, and that night he meets with Mia. And they share a bottle of wine together. They start chit-chatting, but Mia knows that something's up because her and Chip don't do this, and Chip comes right out with it. I need a story. Give me some dirt on UBN. So Mia tells him all about what's going on with Chris. Chip then gives that story to his source at the Times, and the source of the Times is going to look into who this mystery woman could be. And armed with that story, that reporter from the Times is planning on going to the Olympic press conference that Celine, Alex, Stella are all having the next day, the one that Alex and the bro are supposed to be at. He's planning on being there. Before that story takes place, though, Stella is still battling with just the stress of the job. The night before that event, she's in her office and she looks into the AI, mainly her AI. All of the talent have one of these, but she also has one, and she starts talking to it very candidly, asking if she's a bad person because of the DEI situation, how she's helped the company, but not just financially, how she has helped minorities. And she's brutally honest in this conversation. She points out all of her flaws that she has done. It's like she's looking for affirmation from herself, using this AI Stella as a pseudo-therapist. And the worst of it is, it doesn't even make her feel better. But the next day is going to end up being the worst day of her life. She arrives for the press conference, as does Stella, as does Alex, as does Celine. They're all getting ready, but there's one person who's not there, and that is the bro. And when Alex calls him up, the bro says, yeah, I'm not coming. Because what I realized is the commission likely won't back me on doing the debate, and you won't back me on doing the debate. I mean, I need reassurance. I need a guarantee that you will back me if you agree to this. And Alex can't. She can't lie on the phone in that moment. And the bro, knowing full well that they're planning on doing a bait and switch, just says, all right, sorry, I'm not coming. And that's going to leave Celine, Stella, Alex scrambling. There's no way to close a deal on Chris and get her there in that moment, and you've got all those press people expecting a big announcement. So that's when Stella comes with the idea, we'll just show them the AI. A little while later, her and Celine get on stage. They're yucking it up with the reporter, and then it comes for the big announcement. It's the AI, and at first, it is impressive. I I mean, Stella is talking to it. The AI is actually joking back. But then that reporter, Chip's guy from the New York Times, stands up and he says, "Hey, I have a question. Is this a talent replacement tool or just a way to keep him in line?" I asked because I've heard that Chris Hunter is being denied contract parity with white anchors at UBN, and that's why she's threatening to sit out the Olympics. And while he's asking this, mind you, Mia is in the crowd. She's watching this go down. And it's obvious to everybody that Stella and Celine weren't expecting that kind of question. But just as Stella starts to answer it, the AI answers it. Honestly. She talks about how DEI is dead. They never even believed in it. They bury black anchors. They only use them when they really need them. I mean, this AI, it gets worse and worse for Stella. It's making Stella look really bad. And the only thing Stella can do is just freeze in that moment as Celine is begging her, turn it off. But as if things couldn't get worse for Stella, then the AI mentions how she's in love with Miles in front of the entire crowd, and everybody knows who Miles is. It's not only mortifying for Stella, it's embarrassing for Celine, who just gets up, closes the laptop, and walks off stage, knowing that Stella's career is over. Stella shortly leaves stage, and she hyperventilates. She's having a fit. The one thing that she hung her career on, this AI, just did her in. And that night, she only has one place to go, and that's Miles' loft, where she runs, she hugs him. At that moment, she is broken, and Miles says, "You know what? Let's go. Let's get on that plane." So at least there's a glimmer of hope for Stella. She's going to resign, but at least she's going to get on the plane with the guy that she loves and go off. And the next day, that's exactly what happens. Stella resigns. On the morning show, Alex reads off the statement that Stella made. And as Corey is sitting there watching it in his hotel room, he gets the information from his assistant on Fred Micklin and Wolf River, a little bit of a connection at least. It turns out an LLC with Fred Micklin being its only employee was paid off by the Dumont family to the tune of $4.8 million. And now it all makes sense. At that White House Correspondents' Dinner, Celine pressured Fred to hire Corey and have Corey do Celine's bidding. And in return, Fred Micklin would cash in. A little while later, he heads into the UBN offices and he meets with Celine. First, they have a conversation about Stella, with Corey mentioning how this is exactly what Celine wanted the entire time, and Celine saying, actually, she did it all herself. And that's when he brings up that it's convenient that this time she didn't have anything to do with it, because the Wolf River thing, she certainly did. He does ask her why, but she just asks him, "What do you want?" And he wants to get his movie back up and running. That's it. She tells him that it will happen, and then he leaves, getting in the elevator. As he's leaving the building, the elevator does open up, and Raina walks in with boxes. It looks like she was let go. Corey, however, is so transfixed because he sees Bradley, and he's still hung up on her. But far away at JFK Airport, Stella is getting ready to board that plane. Before she was planning on leaving New York City, she wrote Mia a letter. A really nice letter telling her how she got off this beaten path of trying to change things, but Mia was right. She eventually did become Corey and like all the others, not really caring about diversity, but only caring about herself. She did, however, leave Mia with a parting gift, and it's a USB drive. She then simply was at the gate waiting for Miles to show up, but he doesn't. He just texts her, "I'm sorry." And that's because Celine got to him first. Celine met with Miles at his loft, and she explained, there was another guy at one point, probably a better match. But that guy didn't have your drive. That's why I still love you. Your drive. So right now, Miles, you need to choose. You need to choose her or me. And unfortunately for Stella, Miles chose Celine. This is crushing to Stella. She cries, but then eventually she gets up, dusts herself off, and she boards that plane to Naples. The downfall of Stella, though, was done in by that reporter who ended up coming up clutch for Chip, getting him the information he needed on who this mystery woman is. Her name is Sophia Volk. She was a quality control manager and a chemist, and she was let go from Wolf River. There's a contact number. Bradley ends up texting it, and it turns out that that number is still active, and it is still Sophia Volk's. So now Bradley at least has an in. In episode 7, you learn that Sophia, the whistleblower, is in Belarus, so getting to her is going to be really tough for Bradley. Meanwhile, Chip is taking it upon himself to go interview a bunch of the Wolf River survivors, and it's not good. Now, while obviously the survivors of Wolf River have gotten the worst of it, the activists including Claire, are now on the run by the FBI. Claire, in the middle of the night, has nowhere to go. She knows that she's being hunted, so she turns to the one person she knows will let her in the door, and that's Yanko. And Yanko is shocked to see Claire. I mean, it's like he saw a ghost, but she was right. He welcomes her in, and he says, "Whatever you need, I got you." And Yanko wasn't the only one to get an unexpected visitor that night, because Bradley got a visit from the FBI. Again, because they know that she's talked to Claire. And the reason why they know that is because when she forwarded the activist information to Eagle News, they forwarded it to the FBI. So they know that Bradley's in contact with Claire, and they're wondering where exactly she is, but Bradley tells them, "I have no idea. She left. I don't know. I never actually met with her." And the fact is, the FBI, the guy who fought for her, the guy who went to his bosses and said, "Bradley's our girl. She can go to New York. She can be an asset," his patience is running thin. He's getting really pissed off because he just doesn't believe Bradley. But Bradley doesn't know what to tell him because, in all honesty, she doesn't know where Claire is. For Bradley, she's just trying to focus on finishing the Wolf River story and doing her job. And the next day, when she goes to the morning show, she's co-hosting with Yanko, and they get word that the leader of that radical environmentalist group was caught and arrested. So right away, Bradley, during a break, reaches out to Claire to try to get some answers if she's okay, but then she realizes, I'm sitting right next to Yanko. Maybe Claire went to him. And she asks Yanko, have you heard from Claire? But Yanko lies and says, no, I haven't. Why? She explains to Yanko that she's got a source who says that the FBI has a file on that extremist group and that Claire could be involved, and it's pretty serious. And hearing that, Yanko gets really concerned. Because Claire didn't go into exactly vivid detail on why she was showing up at his door in the middle of the night. She just said, "I need some place to crash." So as soon as the show's over, he rushes back to his apartment where Claire is just waking up. He makes her breakfast and they talk. Initially, though, they talk about just their relationship and how secretive it was. But then he gets into what Bradley told him about the file and all of that and how he's concerned. And she wants to see the file. She wants to know exactly what the FBI has on her group. So Yanko's agreed to reach out to Bradley and see if he can facilitate a meeting between Bradley and Claire in his apartment later that day, so hopefully Bradley can show Claire the file. But back at the UBN office, the Stella situation has not gone away. Kabir, the New York Times interviewer, who is also a source for Chip, he's decided to do a story on UBN. It just seems like it's a toxic work environment, and he interviews both Alex and Bro Hartman. And it seems like this timepiece is going to be really bad. But when they get out of the initial meeting with Kabir, while Alex is stressed out, Bro couldn't care less, and he can't figure out why Alex cares. Until finally she turns to him and says, "I spent 20 years of my life here. That's why I care. Because I don't want to think that it's been 20 years of nothing." And the way the Bro looks at it, I don't really care about this place. I can take my podcast and my show anywhere, and Alex, you can do the same thing. But they just have a big-time difference of opinion on this. And it's pretty clear that Alex is beyond stressed to find out what that New York Times article is going to say on UBN. And of course, the whole Stella situation started because they didn't have anybody else for the Olympics, which gives Christine more leverage. So right down the hall, you've got a meeting going on between Mia and Ben. And while they're friendly, there's also contention there, because Mia still believes that she should have gotten the job. And then you've got Ben trying to play hardball, saying, look, there's no more money. I mean, we'll give her a modest boost, but that's about it. And that's when Mia drops a bombshell on Ben. Because that flash drive that Stella sent Mia had some incriminating evidence regarding Fred Micklin paying off an independent investigator with the Mitch Kessler situation. And that was something that Ben had no idea about. This immediately puts all of the onus on Ben, along with Celine, to get a deal done and keep this story out of the press. But Mia reminds him, it's not just Chris's deal, it's my deal as well. And after talking with Celine, it appears that Ben has gotten the okay to just give her what she wants. Ben ends up meeting up with Chris at a staff party. You know, it's the typical pizza party where a corporation decides, we're not giving anybody raises and we probably just laid a bunch of people off, but hey, here's some pizza. Anyone want pepperoni? It's one of those. And by the way, Ray is there, so she didn't get let go. But all the staff knows what this is. Ben, though, walks up to Chris. He tells her, hey, great news. We got your deal done. But the Olympics, though, that's on the shelf. He tries to massage it in there and tell her that they still need the okay from the OC to allow her, because after her little bombshell about cheating, they don't necessarily know if the Olympic Committee is going to want her representing the Olympics. And she's a little taken aback about that, but it seems like Ben is on her side, and Ben actually does want her to be at the Olympic Games in Paris. Meanwhile, in the control room, you've got Chip and Bradley going over the footage that Chip had recorded regarding the survivors of Wolf River. Bradley wants to see all of it, but then she tells Chip about how the FBI is going after Claire and it's not looking good. And initially, Chip is like, you can't give her up. I mean, that's our source. You got to protect her. We don't have to cooperate with them. Because Chip doesn't realize what Bradley is against in this situation. She doesn't have the luxury of not cooperating. She has to cooperate. So Bradley tries to kind of play both sides of the coin with this, but Chip, not knowing the full story, is adamant, no. You can't. You can't give up Claire. And then he leaves to go join the rest of his former staff at this party. It's there where he ends up running into Alex. And at first, they're very cordial because, as Chip puts it, well, yeah, we're cordial because now we have boundaries. And that's when Alex asks him for a favor. Alex knows that Chip is really close with Kabir, so she nicely asks him, hey, can you just get him off my ass for this story? But Chip says, no. No, actually, this is what I'm talking about. This is the boundary I've set. I'm not doing it because I don't want to. And Alex is offended by this. I mean, she's really upset. She can't believe that Chip just won't do her a solid, but he won't. And that's when actually he leaves the conversation, and because Ben's a genius, he decided, hey, you know what? The staff needs karaoke machines. So he set up a karaoke machine, and Chip decides to take advantage of it by singing, "You Don't Own Me." And a lot of the staff join in. I mean, they're looking at Alex, they're looking at Ben. It's pretty clear that the song is directed right at the bosses. Bradley, though, never made it to the party because she got that call from Yanko to head over to his apartment, and when she got there, there's Claire. And she's shocked because she hasn't seen Claire since Claire fled her apartment. Claire explains that she needs to see that file. She needs to know what the FBI has against them. And after a little bit, Bradley decides to give it up. And Claire is like, I knew it. I knew that they were going to try to paint us as the problem, when in reality, we have documented evidence that they were the problem. We're not murderers here. We're not criminals. This sparks a big-time back and forth between the three, with Bradley trying to encourage Claire to go cut a deal with the FBI. Yanko, realizing the severity of the situation, realizing that Claire, who, by the way, is in this file, she's the one funding this group, he realizes that the FBI is going to throw her in jail for a long time. He encourages her to run. And Claire, she wants to go public with this story because she's not a criminal. She's being painted as that. The FBI is going against her. But she doesn't care because the right thing to do is free her and her colleagues' names. She tells them, no, Yanko's right. The FBI is not going to help me out. I have to run. So when Bradley leaves Yanko's apartment, she's under the assumption that Claire is leaving and never coming back. The next day, when Yanko shows up for work, Ariana is waiting for him. Ever since Claire came back into Yanko's life, Ariana hasn't really heard from Yanko, and considering Yanko was ready to propose, that's pretty weird. So she wanted to talk to him. And she essentially tells him, look, you need to figure your shit out. Like, if you want to do this, we need to do it. But if not, don't just string me along. So Yanko has a lot to think about. Meanwhile, upstairs, Alex had a morning meeting with Chris Hunter now that the deal is settled. Alex wanted to know what Chris had planned for her brand new show that she got included with this deal, but Chris says, no, I want to table that conversation. I want to talk about something else. She wants to find something that matters, and that's when Alex pitches her on interviewing Roya, the Iranian fencer who Alex is trying to get asylum for. It's a win-win for Alex. I mean, she gets a puff piece interview that will hopefully put some stress on politicians who, to this point, have been reluctant to put their backing behind Rhea because of the fact that it's election season coming up. And the story does, in fact, matter. And Alex does such a good job pitching that Chris says, all right, yeah, I'll interview her. And it works. When Chris does interview Rhea, it is a puff piece, but the girl's so likable that now you at least have senators willing to meet to talk about asylum. Now, Alex did get some bad news that day. Paul Marks is ring shopping, but she completely forgets about that when the Times piece does come out, and to her surprise, she's barely in it. That's because Bro must have said something to Kabir, because the article is essentially just an interview about Bro Hartman and his upbringing and how he got to this point. And it turns out, as Alex is reading it, guy had a pretty tough childhood growing up. After reading it, Alex actually calls him up to discuss it, but then she invites him over that night for a drink so that she could thank him properly. I think we can speed this up. They hook up. Yeah, because we all knew that was going to happen by episode 1 when he showed up and they didn't get along. Yeah. Now, after they hook up, Alex, you can tell, immediately has buyer's remorse. She's kind of grossed out by what she just did, and she kicks him out, and he gets the sense that she might be having buyer's remorse, but he just has a way about him where he jokes about it and he leaves. While those two were sort of starting a relationship, not too far away, Yanko was discussing his old relationship with Claire. Claire saw pictures in the apartment of Yanko and his soon-to-be fiancé, we think. He starts asking Yanko about it. They start discussing their relationship, but it's during this conversation that Yanko realizes he does actually want to be with Ariana. It might have something to do with the whole fact that the FBI is after Claire, the love of his life, but either way, Yanko tracks down Ariana, leaving a workout class, and proposes right on the street, and she accepts. So now they actually are engaged. The Claire situation, though, is coming to a head the next day. When Bradley shows up for the morning show, they've got this whole Pat Sajak thing ready. It seems like the show is set, but then Layla pulls Bradley into Yanko's dressing room and surprises her with the fact that Claire is going to be discussing her files that she has on this whole situation. And Bradley's like, no, you can't do that. But Claire once again says, I have to free my name. They're lying about us, and I don't care. I mean, I have to tell the truth. It's at this point where Bradley just pleads with her and says, look, if you do this, you will be arrested and I will be arrested. I lied for you to the FBI, but Claire doesn't care again. She never asked Bradley to do that, and she promises her, as soon as I'm done, I'm gone forever. You won't see me again. But Bradley can't take that chance. Not with the FBI breathing down her neck and threatening to throw her in front of a judge. She calls up the FBI, she tells them what's about to happen, and before Claire ever goes on camera, Claire is put in custody, and she's escorted out. And as she's leaving, of course, you have that dramatic scene where she faces the person who betrayed her, because there's Bradley in the hallway. Bradley's day, though, goes from bad to worse because she didn't just betray Claire, she betrayed Yanko as well. And while they have a break, Yanko tells her, I trusted you. Claire trusted you. You stabbed us in the back. I'll never work with you again. In episode 8, after the whole Claire fiasco, Bradley goes to Alex's apartment that night, and she doesn't do it to apologize. She's looking for something. And initially, Alex thinks that Bradley is coming to apologize and coming to explain herself. And Bradley is forced to do that. She does tell Alex, look, I'm sorry, but I was working for the FBI. I didn't really have a choice in this matter. And Alex is stunned. It just seems like ever since Bradley came back, it's one thing after the other that she's been hiding from Alex, this being the latest thing. But not only that, just in journalistic integrity, she gave up her source. And Bradley once again reminds her, yeah, I know, I'm aware I did that. I feel really bad about it, but I was working for the FBI. I did not have a choice. But I didn't come here to resign. I came here because me and Chip found a whistleblower. But in order to get her story on the record, I need to go meet with her in person. And she's in Belarus. And I need to go right now before she changes her mind. I need to go under the order of the network. And in order to do that, I need your signature on it. And Alex is floored. She can't believe that Bradley has come in here after what she just did, asking to go to Belarus to track down a source. And Alex says, no, I'm not doing that. I'm on the verge of landing a presidential sit-down. I'm not doing anything to jeopardize that. You're lucky you have a job. And then there's just typical finger pointing and blaming pot meat kettle sort of situation with these two that we've been seeing for 4 seasons. Alex's night goes from bad to worse when in the middle of the night she gets a phone call from the police telling her that they have her father in custody for public urination and public drunkenness. She has to go pick him up from the station, and he's been kind of lashing out ever since the whole story came out and it cost him becoming the dean. But when she wakes up the next morning, she finds out that somebody was videotaping him peeing on the statue. And it's just not a good look. It's not what Alex needs at the moment. At the moment, what she needs to focus on is the sit down with the president's people in order to assure that she does in fact get that sit down. That's her main objective. It could be huge numbers for UBN. When she gets to work, she finds out that just about everybody knows about the whole story with her dad. Everybody's seen the video. Everybody feels bad for Alex because it's just embarrassing. Before meeting with the president's people, she does want to sit down with Celine and just address some things. And when she goes to Celine's office, she finds that Celine is talking to the bro about a possible political campaign. Now, it turns out that Alex wasn't the only one to have a late-night visitor. Celine also had one from her brother. The story about her and Miles and the affair has gone public in a big way, and it's embarrassed Celine's family. Celine marrying Miles was always thought of as kind of a slap in the face to her parents, and her brother had been sent there to demand that she leave Miles and return to France. He reminds her that she was sent there to cover up a chemical spill, and she says, "Yeah, I did that." But he shoots back, "Yet you kept going because of greed." And she lays out her plan. She tells him, they're going to name a new CEO. I'm going to be in charge of a media company, which means I'm going to control the narrative. So why don't you worry about your little pet project of cleaning up that French River that's still full of crap, and I'll worry about my side of things. But her brother just says, leave your husband and return home. She's not willing to do that. Celine's always been an independent woman. She wants to forge her own path, and she might be able to use the bro to do that. But when Alex interrupts their conversation, Alex just thinks she's interrupting a conversation. It's also awkward because ever since her and the bro hooked up, she hasn't returned any of his calls, so it's just an awkward interaction between the two. But Celine lets Alex know, oh no, we were just wrapping up. The bro says hello to Alex and leaves, and then Alex is able to sit down and stress upon Celine how important it is that they land the presidential interview. When Alex returns to her office, though, she's surprised because her dad is waiting for her. Her dad has come to the office because he wants to clear his name. He feels like his name has been dragged through the mud, and he'll be able to do that with an interview on the morning show. Alex, being ahead of that, could facilitate such a thing, but she says, no, Dad, I'm sorry. I'm trying to land a presidential interview. I've got bigger things on my plate right now. I'm not helping you out. These two get into a big spat where she says, here's my advice, just go away and disappear. But he's not willing to do that, and she doesn't have time for this because she has to go meet with the president's people, which she does. The pitch that Alex presents them goes really, really well. It seems like it's a sure thing that she will get a sit-down with the president. She's kind of flying high after this initial meeting. And then she steps foot in her office and sees that her dad is on the bros show. Because after Alex left her dad kind of started wandering the halls only to find the bro in the middle of his show where he was talking about non-PC things, and her dad decided to shoot his shot. The bro, deciding to stick it to Alex because, once again, she's been blowing him off, said, yeah, you can come on my show. You can talk about whatever you want on my show. But when Alex saw her dad talking on the bro's show, she ran to the studio and immediately shut it down. It gets really awkward between Alex, the bro, her dad. Alex yelling at the bro, you should have asked me first. And then the bro pointing out, yeah, what do you call it when a woman ghosts a guy after sex? At this, Alex is appalled. She definitely doesn't want to talk about her sex life in front of her father, and she just tells the bro, whatever we had, it needs to stay between us. And then she drags her dad out of the studio, putting him in her car and heading back to her place, where on the ride back, she gets a phone call from the president's people, unfortunately informing her that she won't be getting that sit down because the story about her dad and the video has gotten bigger and the president just can't. It's bad timing. Alex puts the rejection on speakerphone so her dad can hear what he did just cost her the biggest interview of her career. This is the match that sparks the atomic bomb that would be World War III between her dad and Alex Levy. It carries over from the car into Alex's apartment. It gets really nasty, really contentious. Her dad talking about his legacy. Alex trying to point out, I am your legacy. And then just getting into the family situation. Because when Alex says, I don't even blame mom for leaving you, her dad decides to actually tell her the reason why her mother left. It wasn't anything her dad did. Her dad admits that he never wanted a child. He had a child. He had Alex because that's what Alex's mom wanted. But after Alex was born, her mom had severe postpartum depression. Her dad tried the best he could. At the time, postpartum wasn't exactly diagnosed, so he didn't know what to do. And then he was stuck with this child he didn't want and a wife who was despondent. Until finally one day she just up and left. Alex never knew any of this. For years, she had been blaming her dad when in reality, it was kind of her fault. But, I mean, come on, it wasn't her fault at all. It was just mental illness. Either way, it's not an easy thing for Alex to hear. It's emotional for her dad to rehash these old bad memories until finally he just leaves. Meanwhile, though, back at the studio, the bro show continued. Celine actually invites her brother into the offices so he can watch a portion of the show to see what she was talking about when she said that she can control the narrative. As they both sit down to watch the bro show, her brother is very dismissive of the bro, and she says, no, that's the future governor of New Jersey. I'm going to finance his campaign, and look what he's going to do for you. And that's when the bro starts this spin job regarding Celine's brother's pet project. It's a company called Cyan. It's supposed to make water clean. It hasn't really done that, but the bro is on his television show lying about it, saying how clean the river is. Suddenly, it all clicks for Celine's brother. He finally recognizes how important it is that they do, in fact, control the narrative, and what a good job his sister has done. He still, however, thinks that she should leave Miles, and once he does leave, she texts Miles. She says, hey, I'm ready to talk, I miss you, but he just texts back, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not ready to talk. That's not exactly what Celine wanted to hear, but she's able to blow off some steam later that night when she gets a phone call from Corey asking her if she wants to go do some cocaine. Corey had one of the worst days of his life. He got a phone call from his mother saying, yeah, you know what, I'm going. Like, mentally, I'm not there anymore. I'm making mistakes left and right, man. I've decided to just do a chemical euthanasia. Corey immediately headed to his mom's place to try to convince her and talk her out of it, but there was no talking her out of it. Once Corey wasn't looking, she took the pills, and not too long later, she passed away. And in order to just cope in that moment, Corey decided to call Celine. Celine's like, yeah, come over to Miles' old studio, and they decided to go skiing, big time. Both of them needed a distraction from the suckiness of their personal lives. Meanwhile, not too far away, Alex, now that she's had time to digest what her dad said, sees the papers that Bradley left and decided, you know what, I will sign off on this. I was being harsh. She calls up Bradley, but Bradley doesn't answer. So she heads to Bradley's apartment. When she knocks on the door, she doesn't find Bradley. She surprisingly finds Chip. And Chip explains, yeah, Bradley left. I mean, she went to Belarus. She was supposed to call me every couple of hours, but she hasn't checked in 6 hours. And I have a source there that thinks that she was detained, because you know what they do to journalists there. As it turns out, Bradley, not getting the okay from the station, has put her in severe jeopardy in Belarus. So if she was taken, a big reason why is because Alex didn't sign off on the paperwork and Bradley was impatient. In episode 9, first thing in the morning, Alex takes the video that Bradley had sent to Chip, and she shows it to not only Celine, but Ben and UBN's top lawyer. There's not really much to the video. It's Bradley being taken at customs. The police in Belarus take her laptop and her hard drive, but Bradley does speak in the video about sending Chip some files. It's not known whether Bradley had been able to meet with the source or what she found or anything, because she's taken. The Belarus police are claiming that they found a suspicious hard drive, and in the moment, she's just in custody. She hasn't been charged with anything. But if she is charged, that's really, really bad, because getting her back is going to be nearly impossible for a long time. So time is of the essence to get Bradley out of custody in this Belarus airport. Eventually, Celine asks, what was she doing in Belarus? And Alex, not knowing Celine's connections to Wolf River, says she was checking in on a story about this chemical company. It was all before the merger, and she had found a source in Belarus, so she went to go talk with her. At this, Celine's ears perk up. She never lets on, though, that she knows about Wolf River. She just continues to gather intel on the matter. And as Alex beats herself up over this, saying how it's her fault, Celine actually says, no, you couldn't have known. It's not your fault. Stop. Alex, though, wants to get on a plane right away to handle this, but Celine shuts that down, saying, no, we're going to go through the State Department on this. And then she turns to Ben and says, we're not going to talk about it on air. Not until we have our ducks in a row and everything prepared for it. Essentially, she's putting the kibosh on airing anything or getting involved with it. She wants to, quote unquote, see how this thing plays out. What she really wants to do is figure out what Bradley had found and then find a solution to it. Alex did, in fact, mention that Bradley was working with Chip, which comes as a big surprise to Ben, so that is going to be Celine's in. In the meantime, though, as far as the staff on the morning show is concerned, Bradley is just sick, which is going to force Chris in her spot all week. And one of the things that Chris wants to do that week is give back her medals. It's a super emotional moment. They bring in the woman that finished second, the Jamaican sprinter, and Chris gives the medals, and the woman forgives her. It's nice, but behind the scenes, though, it is all about Bradley. When Alex does meet with Chip, he's been able to learn from a friend at the IMF that they're planning on moving Bradley at the end of the day the next day. So they really need to work quickly. Chip was able to get the file that Bradley sent over before she was detained, but he just started going through it. He doesn't know what she found, and he doesn't know what they think she found. At the moment, they're thinking that she's an espionage agent. And I will remind you, she was working for the FBI at one point, so they're not exactly wrong. But for Alex, even though Celine said, oh, you can't beat yourself up over this, she is. And she's not about to sit back and let the State Department just handle it. Not after hearing about the fact that they're going to move Bradley and charge her within the next 48 hours. She's got to do something. She's got to act quickly, and there's only one person she knows that might be able to help out. After brainstorming a little bit with Chip and talking about how politics works in Belarus, they both know that you have to kind of sweet talk an oligarch, somebody high up. It's corrupt. And there's one person she knows that knows an oligarch. That is Paul Marks. It's not like she wants to go and beg Paul Marks hat in hand, but at the moment she doesn't have a choice. So she does it. She sets up a meeting with Paul for later that night, not telling him what it's about. Incredibly, Paul Marks is very hospitable. And as Alex sits down and explains the situation with Bradley, they get interrupted by Paul's fixer, Amanda, who has never trusted Alex. She doesn't like the fact that Alex is back asking favors of Paul because she just thinks that Paul becomes putty in Alex's hands. But in this particular instance, there's nothing that Paul can really do. Alex brings up the fact that Paul is familiar with this oligarch over there, a very powerful man named Dimitri. Maybe Paul can talk to him, but Paul tells her, Alex, it's not exactly the way it works. I mean, I'm sorry, but I can't really help you. It's going to send Alex back to the drawing board, and Amanda is certainly relieved that Paul won't be helping her out. The next day in the offices, though, Chip is brought in by Celine and Ben because they want to get the lowdown on what exactly he knows regarding the Bradley situation. They start out just by asking him about the project and about this source, and Chip starts explaining how they found her exactly, but Celine gets really weird with it, hypothesizing that maybe the source was the one that screwed Bradley over, telling the authorities about her and getting her locked up. And Chip just doesn't buy that. But then Celine really goes in on what exactly was in those files. And at first, Chip says, I wouldn't be able to share them with you without Bradley's consent. But when Celine continues to probe, Chip just says, yeah, I didn't get them. And obviously he did, and Celine certainly doesn't buy that. But the way that Celine carried herself in this meeting has Chip's alarm bells going off. So instead of leaving the office after the meeting, he goes down to Bradley's dressing room and snoops around trying to find any information he might be able to regarding anything, any clues. And he doesn't find any because he's interrupted by Mia, who walks in and sees him snooping around, and he makes up some lie about, oh yeah, Bradley asked me to stop by, but Mia doesn't buy it. She says, come on, what's going on? She's not sick. And at first, Chip doesn't want to tell her anything, but she threatens to go to Celine, who Chip already kind of admitted to Mia he doesn't really trust all that much. So this kind of forces Chip to tell Mia everything. And Mia isn't going to rat him out. No, she actually wants to help. So Chip and Mia head over to Alex's apartment later that day where Alex is combing over all the files. She was able to find something. It was just a document that said Wolf River, but that's when Alex stops because she was not expecting Mia to also show up. Their last conversation wasn't exactly a good one. But Mia quickly says, I know everything. I'm here to help. Andre's in Minsk, and he'll help with Bradley as soon as he's on the ground. Chip then gets a phone call, which is going to force these two to talk about the elephant in the room, how things ended. To which Alex apologizes. She owns up for her part in this. She says that she should have went to bat for Mia way more than she did, and she feels really bad about everything. And Mia accepts the apology, so it seems like they're back on good terms, and everybody's just focused on helping Bradley get the hell out of Minsk, Belarus. It's at that moment that Alex gets a surprising phone call from Paul Marks. Even though Amanda pressed him on not helping her out, he couldn't help himself, so he did make a phone call to Dimitri. Turns out Dimitri has two weaknesses, the opera and his mistress, who is a wannabe actress. So Paul has set it up where Dimitri's going to fly in and be his personal guest at the opera that night, where he's instructed Alex and Mia to be there, where Paul will make an introduction. Alex will then pitch Dimitri on involving himself in the Bradley situation and getting her freed. Now, he's not going to do this just out of the goodness of his heart. He's going to want something. And Paul says, well, his girlfriend is an actress, and her TV show has been basically killed. You have connections, so you can either get it up and running or get her a new show, but you got to help out. That's the price it's going to take. And Alex is on board. As everybody gets ready for the opera that night, Celine decided to go visit her old buddy, Corey. Initially, she wanted to check in on him after their skiing trip, but she also wanted to check in on him because she knows what happened to his mom. So she heads over to just be a friend in that moment. But the conversation gets to why exactly she hasn't left Miles yet. And that morphs into their relationship. How Corey was clearly interested in her back in LA years ago, but never made a move. And that leads into them passionately making out all of a sudden. It's hot, it's heavy, and then it gets interrupted by the florist who's got the flower arrangements for Corey's mom's funeral. The two do not pick up where they left off making out. This completely sidetracks Corey into talking about his mom and the fact that she was alone the last few days of her life, and he's beating himself up over it. And all he's got left is this box of her belongings that she left for him that he can't bring himself to actually open. So Celine says, well, let's open it together. I mean, I'll be here for you to support. But as they start opening it up, and it's just general stuff. I mean, there's a leather jacket from his dad in there. There's pictures. Not too far away at the opera, Dimitri does show up. Paul does make the introduction between Alex and Dimitri. It seems like this thing is going to be pretty seamless, but it's not. When Alex explains the situation with Bradley and custody and getting him out, Dimitri shocks both Alex and Paul by saying, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. I mean, it's not just one call, it's several calls, and you want this done immediately. It's just not going to happen. However, he was lying, because when he goes back into the suite, he's talking to his girlfriend in Russian, not aware of the fact that Mia also speaks Russian. She's listening to the conversation. And Dimitri's telling his girlfriend, no, they have more to offer than this. We can get you more than a TV show. So when Mia hears this, she runs downstairs. She finds Alex, who's freaking out at this point, thinking the deal is dead. And Mia says, no, he will make the call. You just have to offer more than a TV show. Now, my dumb ass is thinking, yeah, offer her a movie. But no, that's not where Alex goes. She pulls Paul Marks into the coat closet, and she says what Mia overheard, and she brings up a tech deal that fell through. That's how Paul and Dimitri know each other, this failed tech deal. The deal fell through because Dimitri had gotten some sanctions. But Alex proposes, what if you license us the tech software, and then we just basically give it to Dimitri? With everything going on with the AI and the Olympics, it's a long shot that it would fall back on us. But Paul is worried that it would fall back on them. He tells her, if the feds find out about this, we're going to be screwed. But Alex doesn't care. I mean, this is the one opportunity they have to get Bradley out of there, so she insists, and Paul gives in. He calls up Amanda, and he explains the deal, and Amanda says, are you serious right now? You're going to launder a tech deal through your ex-girlfriend? I mean, what's your end game? To run off with Alex? To go hunting with Vladimir Putin? Like, what do you get out of this? And he says, I have to put my life back together, and there is a karmic debt that needs to be repaid, and it's collecting interest. She gives him some speech on not being able to quit Alex Levy, but he says, yeah, maybe that's true. We're still doing this. And Amanda reluctantly says, okay, I'll make some calls. And boy, does she. She makes some phone calls to Celine, who was in the process of looking over that box pretty frantically as Corey just went to the bathroom. No idea what exactly she was looking for, but when she gets the text from Amanda on what Paul is planning on doing, she excuses herself from Corey's apartment, saying there's a family emergency. She calls up her brother, and she shuts the deal down. So while Alex thought this deal is set, they're going to go through with this, Bradley will be released, Andrea's going to pick her up, and she's sitting at the opera waiting for the phone call from Chip to tell her that Bradley is in safe hands. She unfortunately gets a phone call from Chip saying, I'm sorry, but it fell through. She's being charged. She was taken. At this, Alex is shook. But she's not the only one. When Dimitri gets the text of the fact that the deal fell through, he immediately leaves the opera, thanking Paul, but saying, yeah, we got to go. And Paul's as dumbfounded as Dimitri. He's like, whoa, bud, is everything okay? But Dimitri gives him a look like, no, it's not. So as soon as the show's over, Paul goes to find Alex and asks, what the hell's going on? And Alex fills him in, but she's so troubled by what happened that she just goes home. And she meets up with Chip that night, and they kind of just drink, blaming themselves and wondering what the hell's next. Meanwhile, Amanda's big concern was all of this blowing back on her. So she calls Celine, and Celine assures her, no, none of it's going to fall back on you. My family put the phone calls in to kill the deal. We did it through so many different people that it's not going to come back on you. Do not worry. And as for Bradley, the State Department, this is now their issue. She'll eventually be free. Don't worry about it. But in fact, Celine does not want Bradley to ever be freed. Her brother, who was really the one that did kill this deal, starts telling his sister, you need to thank me for this one. I just bailed you out. You think you should be in charge. This is why I'm in charge. But when he says, they're going to keep trying to get Bradley back, Celine says, yeah, they can try, implying that they can try, but they're not going to be able to. And UBN is, in fact, trying. I mean, as soon as Bradley was charged, Ben put a full court press basically saying that UBN and the morning show is just going to be all Bradley all the time until she is returned. But Celine might have another issue, because after she left, Corey put on his dad's old leather jacket, the one that was left to him by his mom. And as he was feeling around the pockets, there was a report that was stuffed into one of them. A report by the EPA from Wolf River. And in the season finale, we fast forward 28 days where Corey took that EPA report he found and he just put it in a safe. He didn't mention it to anybody. He's still sleeping with Celine. Meanwhile, you've got Bradley still in a Russian gulag with no hope of really getting out, and Alex still trying to keep this story in the front page news to try to put pressure on the U.S. government to get her out, which is becoming more and more of an issue. Every day that goes by, it's becoming harder to do so. But Alex and Chip did get a piece of good news. Chip was able to get the EPA report from the EPA regarding Wolf River and Martel Chemical. And as he's perusing it, he's noticing something really interesting. That's the fact that it was clearly doctored. When he matches things up, it doesn't match up at all. So now it's got him thinking that maybe if they can expose this story for what it is, a cover-up at the EPA, that could put Bradley firmly back in the news because it is her story, and they will have to bring her back. But they also need more proof of this. As Chip and Alex start talking about where they could possibly get this proof, they remember that Bradley had mentioned something with Corey and the EPA, so Chip decides to go pay him a visit on his studio lot, and he's stressed out. The studio is dealing with graphics problem, and he doesn't really have time to deal with Chip, but Chip shows up, they get right to it at the behest of Corey, and Chip tells him that he wants him to look over the EPA report, maybe something will jog his memory a bit, but Corey doesn't really want to do that. Corey has no interest in helping Bradley out because Corey is still really upset about what Bradley did. He viewed it as her backstabbing him to get information on this whole Wolf River situation. And Chip is kind of gobsmacked by this. It's like, dude, come on. She's in a Russian gulag right now with no hope, and you could be that hope. But at this moment, Corey is just cold. Either way, Chip does give him the new EPA report that he has, not aware of the fact that Corey has the actual EPA report. And he just says, hey, man, look it over and see if something jogs your memory. And by the way, for what it's worth, she was really broken up about what to do with your relationship. I mean, everything that happened with you two was real. So it kind of gets the best of him a little bit. He gets guilt-tripped into it, and that night he decides to look over the EPA report that was given to him by Chip and the EPA report that was given to him by his mother on her deathbed. And when he looks it over, Yeah, it doesn't add up at all. I mean, the numbers are clearly deflated to help out Martel Chemical and Wolf River. At this, Corey can't even sleep that night. He's just sitting on the couch when Celine, who was sleeping over, wakes up, notices he's not there, goes in the living room and says, "Yo, what's going on?" He says to her, "Your family must have had a financial interest in Martel since you paid Fred to bury the story." I mean, Bradley was getting close to something, and now not even the Red Cross can get in to look at her. Celine denies any wrongdoing in this, and Corey says, "Great, well, your family can help her get out." And you know what? I think I can help your family. I have the real EPA report. And if your family makes the phone call and gets her home, then I'll give it to you guys. And you guys can do whatever you want with it. You can bury it for all I care. Now, keep in mind, my EPA report proves that Martel is liable for everything that happened to those people. So this is a pretty good offer. And still, Celine denies any wrongdoing. She claims that her family can't wave a magic wand, but also says, "You know what, I'll make a call and I'll do it for you." The two then head back to bed, but Celine is unaware that there was a wrecking ball headed her way the next day. Because at the studio that day, Ben had approached Mia regarding somebody getting access to the AI tech that they weren't supposed to get access to. He doesn't know who it was, but clearly someone tried to access it and they were able to do so successfully, and he wants Mia to look into it. Initially, Mia doesn't want to, but Ben reminds her, "Hey, this was on your watch," so she does so. She finds the one person, or at least his username. She circles it. She messages him privately and says, "Hey, we need to meet." And then she finds out who this person was. It was one of the producers for the morning show. When the Iranian defection happened, he was producing the show that day. He was able to access the AI tech. More importantly, he was able to access Alex's AI. And considering there was a very damning deepfake made of Alex, smoking gun leads to this particular producer. And Mia says, "What happened? I'll keep you out of it." And what happened was Celine had put him up to this. Celine trying to push Alex out of UBN. But once everything happened with Stella and the whole Bradley situation, it put Alex and the whole deepfake thing to the wayside. But when Mia tells Alex in the middle of the night what actually happened, Alex comes into the office that day fuming. She is pissed off, looking for blood. She goes right at Celine, demanding that Celine turn in her resignation because pretty clear that all that sisterhood crap was just that. It was crap. But Celine shocks her by saying, "No, I'm not resigning. You are." That little meeting that you had at the opera trying to launder tech to get Bradley back, that's not in the best interest of shareholders. It's borderline illegal. Yeah, so no, you're actually going to resign. And at that, Alex has nothing to say. She can't believe that Celine knows about the meeting. With nowhere else to turn, she goes to Paul Marks' apartment to just vent and discuss their next move. By the way, the newly single Paul Marks. Worth mentioning that. And Paul is as shocked as Alex is regarding Celine knowing about their meeting. But Paul also tells her, "Hey, you took me down. I think you can take her down as well. You just have to find the information. Find something on her. Because if she knows about our meeting, she was doing some backdoor shady deals to find out about that meeting. So you just have to find somebody that knows her really well." And to that, Alex has the right person. It's Corey. So she heads right from Paul Marks' apartment to Corey's apartment, bursting in and saying, "Hey, we need to talk." She's trying to rush me out. And then all of a sudden, as Corey, by the way, is trying to get her attention, saying, "Hey, we need to do this another time," Celine walks in. And then it all clicks for Alex. It's over. Her one great last hope, Corey, is sleeping with the woman who's trying to push her out. She was on borrowed time anyway. So the next morning, she shocks the world by announcing that she is leaving UBN. With Alex out and Stella out, it looks like Celine has won. She's flying high as she leaves the office that day. She goes home, and she's a little surprised because there's a visitor waiting for her. It's Miles. Now, Miles had come back, and he was ready to talk things over, but before he did, he decided to stop at his studio, where he found the vial of cocaine. And he knew that his wife wasn't going to do cocaine by herself, so it begged the question, who were you doing it with? And eventually she owned up to the fact that it was Corey. So a very angry Miles pays Corey a visit in his apartment, and they get right into it. Miles saying, "You were a puppet all along, man." And Corey trying to act like he wasn't, saying, "Oh, if you're talking about Wolf River, I know all about it." But Miles tells him, no, you don't. And that's when Miles really pulls the curtain back on everything that happened. Corey thought that his mother was a whistleblower, but Miles says, no, your mother wasn't a whistleblower, Corey. She was in charge of burying the story for Wolf River. And she did it because you were out in LA spiraling and Celine needed help. So Celine went to your mother at that event and promised her that if she gave you a big fancy promotion in New York, the head of news, then in turn she would bury the story. And she made it look like you earned this, the boy wonder, but you didn't. Nah, you've been played this entire time, not just by Celine, but by your mother as well. And then Miles leaves, leaving Corey aghast. Now, not too far away, Alex was also dealing with what happened that day, resigning from UBN. The first visitor she got was surprisingly her father. And after he attempted to just be a dad and listen and understanding the fact that her entire life was UBA, UBN, he decided to get proactive. That night, Alex met with Chip and her dad to discuss the next steps, and what they decided on doing was suing Celine and UBN for wrongful termination. Now, this is very risky. It would break Alex's NDA, and as Chip reminds her, hey, the last person that tried to go after this Wolf River story, that lawyer ended up dead, so are you sure you want to do this? But her dad is adamant. This is the right move. It's the proactive move. They'll have to release some files, and maybe you'll find a smoking gun. So they plan a press conference the next day that will tell the world why she did what she did, resigning, and the impending lawsuit regarding Celine and UBN. And that next morning, as the morning show is going on with their regular scheduled programming, Mia gets a text from Chip saying, we're live. She knew all about this. And she says, hey, did anyone know about this? I mean, look, Alex is live at the courthouse. So they pull it up on one of the monitors and they start watching it, and they are shocked to hear the allegations that Alex is spewing regarding their boss. That's when Ben storms in and says, hey, did anyone know about this? And everybody plays dumb. Oh, no, we had no idea. But Ben is in full panic mode. He calls up Celine, who had no idea this was going on, and he says, yeah, she's suing us, and she's down in the courthouse, and there are a bunch of cameras rolling. Like, what do you want me to do? Because Ben's the head of news. It's his call to put the Alex Levy presser on the news. And Celine, no shock, says, yeah, don't put it on. I just go with the regular scheduled stuff. So Ben walks back into the newsroom. He tells everybody, we're just going to go with the regular scheduled stuff. She's attacking Celine and the network, and it's just not a good look. And Mia looks at him, shocked, and says, Ben, this is news. Other stations are covering this. And by the way, not for nothing, but this is going to blow back on you. You do realize that. It's going to look really bad for you. And to that, Ben actually listens. He gives the nod, saying, okay, yeah, no, put it on the air. You're right. So they do. But floors up, you've got Celine about to leave, thinking that she had squashed this, at least for the time being, when she gets a shocking phone call from her brother saying, yeah, you really messed up because Alex is accusing us of all this Wolf River stuff, and she's doing so on your network. And that's when a very surprised Celine turns on the TV to shockingly find Alex Levy on UBN. They're covering it. Celine calls her confidant, Corey, at this point, demanding that he get to the courthouse, shut this thing down. And Corey's like, no, I'm on my way, don't worry. Celine wants Corey to be the kind of muscle threatening Alex and whoever else she's with, that if they don't stop this, Bradley's never coming back. And at this point, Celine is literally screaming in the phone, I will keep Bradley in that gulag forever. But as she's doing this, she notices there's an echo. And then she turns around to notice that Alex Levy is holding up Corey's phone to the microphones. Everything that Celine had just said about keeping Bradley in Belarus forever was just broadcast out. And that begs the question, what exactly is Celine covering up? Why would she want Bradley in Belarus forever? It's not a good look at all. And all of this happened because after Miles' little visit to Corey, he did some soul searching. That morning, he had a phone call regarding Alex's impromptu presser, and he headed over to Alex's building to discuss the plan. And at first, they get into it, but he says, no, you don't understand. You're not going to win. You need to catch her by surprise. I can help. And they orchestrated this trap for Celine, which worked. It's a shocking revelation. I mean, everybody in UBN is surprised. Celine tries to get out of there, but she's not able to, at least not before security and Ben catch up to her, and she resigns. The board is going to have to find a new CEO, but for the time being, it is going to be in the hands of Mia and Ben. The relationship seems to be a hell of a lot better than what it was, by the way, and Mia has her eyes set on running the whole damn thing. And because Celine has a very powerful family, there's probably nothing that's going to happen to her. She gets on a plane with her brother, she leaves back for Paris, she writes Miles a goodbye note, and that's it. But for Alex, the whole thing was getting Bradley back, and she finally gets her wish. Paul Marks is going to facilitate a jet. He is worried about her getting back to the country. But when Alex heads over to Belarus and she finally is reunited with Bradley, she is so relieved. She apologizes, but she tells Bradley, "Your story did it. You changed everything." And Bradley, who had no idea about any of this, is like, "What, really?" And Alex says, "Yeah, no, you did. Let's get you home." And that's the end of season 4 of The Morning Show. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel. I have a Patreon if you want to do that, or you could just become a channel member just to support. That'd be cool. I have merch like t-shirts and a mug. Hey, Christmas is coming up. Who doesn't want a mug that says the recaps? Everybody wants a mug that says the recaps. Let me know what you thought in the comment section regarding this season, what you liked, what you didn't. And don't worry, I'll be back for season 5.